Utah County. I'm working with the Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray as he handles this case and as the county deals with the publicity surrounding this case. We appreciate your being here. Jeff will enumerate the charges and detail what the county's findings are up to this point. And then if you will take questions, the number of questions may be limited, however. I may cut it off. I may assist him in helping to pick the people who are asking the question. We just ask that you keep the questions to the process of what we're talking about and refrain from asking questions that speculate or get into the political dynamic of the case. For Utah County, this is a murder case. We're trying a murder case. We're trying to keep the questions to that, but I understand that you're under pressure and have a lot of different questions and we'll try to answer them. We're joined today by our sheriff and our prosecution team and our county commissioners.
Let's see, make sure I got the sound right. Oh, Lord, hold on.
Jeff is going to be the only one speaking right now, and I'll introduce right now County Attorney Jeff Gray.
Let me find the Associated Press. Give me 1 second, y'all. This is Pascal, but I won't find the Associated Press.
The murder of Charlie Kirk is an American tragedy. Charlie Kirk was murdered while engaging in one of our most sacred and cherished American rights, the bedrock of our democratic republic, the free exchange of ideas in a search for truth, understanding, and a more perfect union. It is also an offense against the state and to the peace and enjoyment of the people of Utah and of all those who visit here. But Charlie Kirk's murder also strikes a more personal and intimate chord. Charlie Kirk was first and foremost a husband and a father to 2 beautiful young children.
Shout out to Pascal for
He
this.
was a brother and a friend. Like all murders, the senseless and needless taking of Charlie Kirk's life has shattered the lives of those he loved
See if I
and
get
those who loved
decent
him.
audio.
To Charlie's
with
wife,
this.
Erica, his 2 young children, his parents, his family, and his friends, I express my sincere condolences and
Dang,
offer
that
my
audio
heartfelt
sucks.
prayers on your behalf. I also want to express my concern for everyone who was at Charlie's
Here we go, Court TV. Here we go.
University of Utah Valley University.
Here we go, Court TV. Thank you, Pascal, for that little bit.
And those who loved him. To Charlie's wife, Erica, his 2 young children, his parents, his family, and his friends, I express my sincere condolences and offer my heartfelt prayers on your behalf. I also want to express my concern for everyone who was at Charlie's Turning Point USA event at the University of Utah Valley University, and all who have been impacted by this tragedy. As county attorney, I'm in charge of bringing justice to those who have been victimized. I am charged with bringing justice for those who are harmed. I am charged with bringing justice for Charlie Kirk. I am committed to these aims. I take this responsibility seriously. Today, after reviewing the evidence that the law enforcement has collected thus far, I am filing criminal information charging Tyler James Robinson, age 22, with the following crimes. Count 1, aggravated murder, a capital offense, for intentionally or knowingly causing the death of Charlie Kirk under circumstances that created a great risk of death to others. Count 2, felony discharge of a firearm, causing serious bodily injury, a first-degree felony. The
state is further alleging aggravating factors on counts 1 and 2 because the defendant is believed to have targeted Charlie Kirk based on Charlie Kirk's political expression and did so knowing the children were present and would witness them on the side. The state is also charging the defendant with count 3, obstruction of justice, a second-degree felony for moving, concealing the rifle used in the shooting. Count 4, obstruction of justice, a second-degree felony for disposing of the clothing he wore during the shooting. Count 5, witness tampering, a third-degree felony for
I should have used my mic.
to delete his incriminating text. Count 6, witness tampering, a third-degree felony for directing his roommate to stay silent when he's questioning him. And count 7, commission of a violent offense in the presence of a child, a Class A misdemeanor, for committing homicide knowing the children were present and may have seen or heard the murder and did so based on Charlie Kirk's political expression. Also, following the press conference, I am filing a notice of intent to seek the death penalty. I do not take this decision lightly, and it is a decision I have made independently as county attorney, based solely on the available evidence and circumstances. Because we are seeking the death penalty, the defendant will continue to be held without bail in Tuck County Jail. Turning to the 10-page information, these are the allegations. On September 10th, 2025, at approximately 12:23 p.m., Charlie Kirk was shot and killed while speaking to a large crowd on the campus of Utah Valley University in Orange, Utah. Police found a suspected murder weapon, a bolt-action 30-06 rifle, nearby. Over the next approximately 33 hours, police conducted a manhunt for the shooter until the evening of September 11, 2025, when Tyler James Robinson surrendered to police at the Washington County Sheriff's Office. DNA consistent with Robinson was found on the rifle's trigger. After shooting Mr. Kirk, Robinson hid the gun, discarded the clothing he wore when he fired the rifle, and told his roommate to delete incriminating text messages and not talk to police. Children were present at the time of the shooting. Turning Point USA, a nonprofit organization founded in 2012 by Charlie Kirk, organized a public outdoor event to be held at noon at UVU. The event was the first in a series of similar events to be held at college campuses nationwide. Mr. Kirk is a well-known conservative activist, famous for these type of events, where he discusses various political issues and debates with audience members. His events and comments have garnered a significant number of supporters and drawn the ire of many disagreeers. The event at UVU was announced far in advance and garnered significant publicity and interest. Consequently, several hundred people attended. Mr. Kirk was interacting with the crowd before the event officially got underway. Then, at approximately noon, Mr. Kirk seated himself under a portable canopy behind a table and microphone. He began speaking to the crowd and fielding questions from attendees, a format Mr. Kirk commonly used at his events. Mr. Kirk allowed his questioners to approach a microphone positioned directly in front of him. Mr. Kirk's team members were very close to him on his right and left, as well as some behind his canopy and others at various close locations near him. The large crowd surrounded Mr. Kirk on three sides. Temporary metal fencing separated attendees from Mr. Kirk by only half a feet. Directly above, behind Mr. Kirk, was the UV view called the flaps, an indoor walkway spanning several feet with floor-to-ceiling glass windows, which overlooked the plaza where Mr. Kirk was seated. People were in the walkway at the time of the shooting. Approximately 15 minutes into the event, Mr. Kirk was answering a question about mass shootings by transgender individuals when a gunshot rang out. The bullet struck Mr. Kirk in the neck. He slumped to the ground almost immediately. The bullet's trajectory passed closely to several other individuals beside Mr. Kirk, including the questioner, who was standing directly in front of Mr. Kirk. Children were visible near Mr. Kirk's stage when he was shot. Mr. Kirk was rushed to a nearby hospital where he was declared deceased. The medical exam.
Why would a commercial come up in the middle of the live stream? Come on.
Police officer was watching the crowd from an elevated vantage point. As soon as he heard the shot, he began to scan the area for threats. Believing the shot came from a rifle because of its sound, he looked for potential sniper positions. He noted a roof area approximately 160 yards away from Mr. Kirk as a potential shooting position and rushed there to look for evidence. The suspected shooting position is adjacent to an open, publicly accessible walkway. To access the suspected location, a person must climb over a railing and then drop to the roof only slightly below. The UV officer climbed over the railing and down onto the roof. He then walked to the suspected shooting position and confirmed a clear shooting corridor between the position and Mr. Kirk's seat. He also noticed markings in the gravel rooftop, consistent with a sniper having lain on the roof. Impressions in the gravel potentially left by the elbows, knees, and feet of a person in a prone shooting position. Police reviewed surveillance with the camera covering the roof and discovered that it recorded an individual dressed in dark clothing cross the railing from the public walkway and drop onto the roof at approximately 12:50 p.m. Although the individual moved out of the camera's view for a short time, the camera again captured the individual running across the roof and then low crawling to the area the UVU officer recognized as where the suspected sniper had dropped to a prone shooting position. After a short time, which matches the known time of the shot, the individual arose and ran across the roof. This discovery led to an intensive review of UVU surveillance recordings to attempt to track and identify the suspect. Surveillance revealed the following. At approximately 11:51 a.m., the suspect entered campus from the north. He is seen wearing a black shirt with an American flag in the center, a dark baseball cap, and large sunglasses. Throughout the surveillance, the suspect keeps his head down and rarely raises his head enough to get a full image of his face. As he proceeds across the campus, he is seen walking with an unusual gait. The suspect walks with very little bend in the right leg, consistent with a right and hip stance.
Damn, my
This
damn head hurt.
unusual gait continues until the suspect is seen crossing the runway off the open walkway to the roof, where he leaves the camera. The camera later captures the suspect as he runs across the roof to the suspected shooting position. Immediately after the shot is fired, the camera captures the suspect running across the roof, carrying an item whose shape is consistent with the rifle. The suspect is then seen climbing down from the roof. He appears to drop the item he is carrying as he hits the ground and begins to fall. He then picks up the item and runs toward the emergency campus. Expanded crime scene investigation. Law enforcement officers followed the suspect's escape path to the northeast end of campus, where they believe the suspect left campus and entered a wooded area. In that wooded area, investigators found a bolt-action rifle wrapped in a towel. The rifle contained 1 spent round and 3 unspent rounds. This is consistent with the facts officers observed at the time of and immediately after the shootings. No shell casings were found on the bridge, suggesting a bolt-action covered in auto-loading weapon, and only a single round was fired. Each round of the rifle contained an etched inscription as follows. The fire cartridge was etched, no Tice's bulge, O-W-O, what's this? The second cartridge that was again not spent, the last 3 were not spent, not fired. The second, hey fascist, catch, arrows, symbols. The third cartridge, oh Bella, chow, Bella, chow, Bella, chow, chow, chow. The fourth cartridge, if you read this, you are gay. LMAO. The rifle, ammunition rounds, and towel were sent for forensic processing. DNA consistent with defendant was found on the trigger, other parts of the rifle, the fired cartridge casing, 2 of the 3 unfired cartridges, and the towel. Law enforcement was unable to immediately locate the shooter, so they published photos of the shooter from the UV surveillance cameras and asked for the public's help in identifying him. Meanwhile, law enforcement continued to try to identify the shooter through other means. The Washington County investigation. On the evening of September 11, 2025, as law enforcement continued their investigation, Tyler James Robinson went to the Washington County Sheriff's Office with his parents and a family friend to turn himself in. Robinson's mother stated that the following late, September 11, 2025, the day after the shooting, Robinson's mother saw the photo of the shooter in the news and thought the shooter looked like her son. Robinson's mother called her son and asked him where he was. He said he was at home sick, and that he had also been at home sick on September 10th. Robinson's mother expressed concern to her husband that the suspect shooter looked like Robinson's father. Robinson's mother explained that over the last year or so, Robinson had become more political and had started to lean more to the left, becoming more pro-gay and trans rights oriented. She stated that Robinson began to date the group biological male who is transitioning genders. This resulted in several discussions with family members, but especially between Robinson and his father, who have very different political views. In one conversation before the shooting, Robinson mentioned Charlie Kirk would be bullied back at UPD, which Robinson said was a stupid thing for me to do. Robinson accused Kirk of spreading hate. Robinson's father reported that when his wife showed him the surveillance image of the suspected shooter in the news, he agreed that it looked like their son. He also believed that the rifle that police suspected the shooter used matched a rifle that was given to his son. As a result, Robinson's father contacted his son and asked him to send his Robinson. Robinson did not respond. However, Robinson's father spoke on the phone with Robinson. Robinson implied that he planned take his own life. Robinson's parents were able to convince him to be in their home. As they discussed the situation, Robinson implied that he was the shooter and stated that he just wanted to end it. When asked why he did it, Robinson explained there is too much evil and the guy, referring to Charlie Kirk, spreads too much hate. They talked about Robinson turning himself in and convinced Robinson to speak with a family friend who is a retired deputy sheriff. At Robinson's father's request, the family friend met with Robinson and his parents and convinced Robinson to turn himself in. The family friend spoke to police and reported telling Robinson that it would be best if he brought all members with him to the sheriff's office to avoid police having to search his parents' home. The friend also asked Robinson if he had any clothes that were related to what he did. Robinson replied that he had disposed of the clothes in different areas. The roommate. Police interviewed Robinson, a biological male who was involved in a romantic relationship with Robinson. The roommate told police that the roommate received messages from Robinson about the shooting, and he did provide those messages to police. On September 10, 2025, the roommate received a text message from Robinson which said, "Drop what you're doing, look under my keyboard." The roommate looked under the keyboard and found a note that stated, quote, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." Police found a photograph of this note. The following text exchange then took place. After reading the note, the roommate responded, "What? You're joking, right? Robinson, I am still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in form for a little while longer then. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you." Roommate, you weren't the one who did it, right? Robinson,
Why is he reading text messages?
Roommate, I thought they caught the person. Robinson, no, they did some crazy old, then interrogated someone in similar clothing. I had planned to grab my rifle from my ground point shortly after, but most of that side of town got locked down. It's quiet, almost enough to get out, but there's one vehicle lingering. Roommate, why? Robinson, why did I do it? Roommate, yeah. Robinson, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be carried. If I am able to grab my rifle and see, I will have.
Discover a world-class skate park right here in the West Country and skate Charleston. Drop into one of the bowls, the street course, or just cruise the snake run. Whether you're ready to push your limits or just try.
Crap, wrong button.
Swept that spot, but I got one chance. Robinson again. I'm wishing I had circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. IDEK if it's had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about prints I had to leave in the bush where I changed outfits. Didn't have the ability or time to bring it with. I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find prints. How the F will I explain losing it to my own family? Only thing I left with the raffle was the rifle wrapped in a towel. Remember how I was engraving bullets? The Afghan messages are mostly in big B. If I see notice bulge UWU on Fox News, I might have a stroke of a light and then I have to leave. That really effing sucks. Judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's back done just fine. I think that was a $2K dollar stone. Robinson, delete this exchange. Again, Robinson, my dad wants photos of a rifle. He says Grandpa wants to know who has what. The Feds released a photo of the rifle. And it is very, he's calling, not answering Robinson. Since Trump got into office, my dad has been pretty psycho. Robinson, I'm gonna turn myself in with one of my neighbors here. And you are all I worry about. Really, I'm much more worried about you. Robinson, don't talk to Ricky, please. Don't take any interviews or make any comment. Any police ask questions, ask for a lawyer, and stay silent. The search for Robinson's residence. Police executed the search warrant on Robinson's residence.
Damn it.
During that search,
Be right back.
police discovered shell casing with etchings, like the etchings found on the shells in the rifle. Police also found several cartridges with bullet holes in the magazine. Now, as I stated, again, I read those allegations. These are allegations. And like the evidence set forth in this statement, those allegations, what you've heard from the media, even from state and federal officials, has not been tested in a crucible. I understand the public's desire to know the facts. My own family wants to know. Why are we reluctant to share the details of the investigation itself and comment on the case? Because I want to ensure a fair and impartial trial. I became a prosecutor because of my love for the ideals of this great country and the principles embedded in our Constitution. The free exchange of ideas and opinions is critical to this great American experiment. And so too are the protections afforded to the accused found in the Fifth and Sixth Amendments. The right against self-incrimination, the right to a speedy public trial, the right to effective assistance of counsel, the right to confront one's accusers, and the right to compel the attendance of witnesses. And perhaps most importantly, under our Constitution, the accused is presumed innocent until we, the state, prove to an impartial jury of the defendant's peers his guilt beyond reasonable doubt. That jury cannot rely on our allegations, on what they hear in the news, or on what they hear from the public official. The jury is the sole trier of fact, and they will ultimately determine those facts based on evidence a trial witness has determined is admissible. Again, as prosecutors, we bear the burden to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But make no mistake, we welcome this burden. I'd like to now introduce my trial team. My trial team who will be charged with prosecuting the case. This is a veteran and expert team of some of the state's best trial attorneys. Chad Freelander, who is one of my two chief deputies, Ryan McBride, and David Sturgill, on the far right there. And those two were very much involved in preparing circumstances, worked day and night to see that accomplished well after Robinson was taken into custody. Also, Laura Hunt, she's one of our special victims prosecutors, and Chris Ballard, my second chief deputy, who will be handling motions. I'm going to explain just the procedural steps. We're not a grand, we don't have a grand jury system like the federal courts do. It's a preliminary hearing system. So the arrest and filing of the criminal information are merely the first steps in the criminal process. Today at 3 p.m., the defendant will appear before a judge in the Utah 4th District Court for his first appearance, to be informed of these charges and to ensure that he has an attorney to represent him. The hearing will be brief. The judge will conduct that first appearance virtually via WebEx. This is not unusual. In the 4th District, all felony first appearances for defendants who are in custody are held virtually. A link to that hearing is available from media on the Utah State Courts X account at Utah State Courts. Now, following defendant's first appearance, he will be entitled to a preliminary hearing. At that hearing, the state will be required to show probable cause that defendant committed the crimes. The purpose of the preliminary hearing is not to determine guilt, but simply to assure the court that the prosecution has enough evidence to proceed to trial. If a judge finds probable cause and finds the case over for trial and arranges at that hearing, the judge will again inform the defendant.
Okay, I'm back.
The next step following the arraignment is an opportunity for the parties to file any relevant motions and ultimately the trial itself. This case has generated a tremendous amount of interest. The public's desire for information is understandable, but it bears reiterating that this case will be tried in a court of law consistent with our Constitution, not the court of public opinion. Thus, we will only discuss the case with the press occasionally. It will not be a day-to-day or week-to-week occurrence, but we will only do so in a manner as not to jeopardize the fair trial process. Before I conclude, I want to express my appreciation for the tireless work of local, state, federal law enforcement officers. They have an extremely difficult, dangerous, and often thankless job. I'm proud to acknowledge the exceptional work they do every day, and particularly their work on this case. It was truly a marvel to witness. Their skilled work and dedication have brought us to this point. I'm also grateful for the leadership demonstrated by Bo Mason, the Commissioner of the Utah Department of Public Safety, FBI Special Agent in Charge Rob Bowles, Utah County Sheriff Mike Smith, our local police chiefs, and Police John Biddy, the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Utah. I'm also grateful for the support of our Governor, Spencer Cox, and our Attorney General, Derek Brown, who's standing behind me today and has offered his support.
I'm gonna go cut that fan on.
Trial. Finally, I want to thank our Utah County Commissioners, Amelia Powers Gardner, Brandon Jordan, and Skylar Pellegrin. They too have pledged to assist with the resources needed to successfully prosecute this case. I will now take these questions.
Here we go.
I don't have to. I talked to the folks I understood what you were talking I'm going to speak to the state of my public.
Are they even asking anything?
I'm not,
Okay, they are.
I can't comment where all the investigation is know that these agencies are continuing to investigate this case.
Let me see. Get that. Bear with me, y'all.
When it comes to defense, they have different charges and they're reviewing the evidence. After they review the evidence and the law, they file charges, but I'm not privy to exactly what they're looking for. Again, I'm not prepared to answer that question. It's part of our code, and so ultimately, it's better as well.
Hopefully this here will be better.
I just apologize. It's still under investigation. I am not going to comment. I am not going to comment. Well, as attorneys, we typically like to control that information to preserve an impartial jury. Just, excuse me, I don't have any. What? I couldn't predict what they're going to do. That's what
When is that it? Wait a minute, that can't be it, can it? Or they have Court TV is having problems. Did it freeze?
so we're comfortable with that.
Okay, yeah, it did freeze.
I'm not going to comment on that either. I can't share any more than what I've already said.
You gotta tell us something. Something? Anything?
The evidence that I'm willing to share is what I just read in our statement. It's information.
Oh, come on, and then they gonna cut them off. Man, y'all see that bullshit? Bro, it was bullshit. You know, it's gonna sit there and cut them off.
I think he needs one too. What do you think? All right, you guys ready to fight some crime?
Yeah.
Let's see what ABC News guys say.
Is where health meets care.
Come on, ABC News. These damn
If you got hit,
commercials.
even as a passenger or in an Uber, you would need to try this.
Say that
gate, walking in a
What
very
you got
sort
for
of
us,
different
ABC?
kind of way was because he was hiding a rifle allegedly in his pants. We learned that this was a rifle that was given to him, according to authorities here, again allegedly given to him by the family, and in fact in the text messages offered by the county attorney here today, the suspect, it would appear, revealed that that gun once belonged to his grandfather, actually saying, what would my dad make of not getting this gun back? Talked about the rifle, that there was just one spent round, one bullet fired. Talked about the inscription, which we had reported on already here on ABC News, on each of those cartridges. He also offered new information, new insight into the family of Mr. Robinson, the suspect here, Tyler Robinson's mother. According to the county attorney, was the person who saw the image released to the public, some of these images from surveillance, and believed this looked like her son. She then engaged her husband on this, who agreed with her. They reached out to their son, to Tyler Robinson, who allegedly, according to the county attorney today, told his mother, I'm homesick, and I was homesick yesterday, which would have been the day of the crime. That's what he told his mother. The county attorney then offering text exchanges between Tyler Robinson, the suspect, and his roommate, went down a litany of messages. Among the key messages, and there'll be a number of them, obviously, that are significant in any trial moving forward. But one of those messages to the roommate from the suspect, he allegedly writes, I was hoping to keep this a secret until I died in old age. And the county attorney laid out in a very public form today, in a manner, I should say, that the suspect, Tyler Robinson, when asked by his family, and again, this is according to the Utah County attorney, when asked by his family, why did you do this? And when asked by the roommate, why did you do this? His answer in both situations, it would appear, according to the county attorney, was because he believed Charlie Kirk, some of the rhetoric was too hateful. And again, those aren't his precise words, but that's what he cited to his parents and to his roommate. And of course, the county attorney laying out at the very beginning of this press conference that Charlie Kirk was killed while engaging in one of the cherished American rights, and that is the free exchange of ideas. That attorney saying he's fully aware that the country is watching this case very closely. So that is a summary of a lot of the news that was made here in this press conference this afternoon. Jeff Gray, Utah County attorney. I want to bring in our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, who is watching right along with me. And Pierre, in addition, they discussed the DNA picked up on some of this evidence, that screwdriver, of course, the towel that was used to wrap the rifle, which was discovered in the woods, and also this news that it was the mother of Tyler Robinson who believed, this looks like my son. They said she then talked to her husband and that he agreed with her.
Indeed, David. Here are some of the things that struck me about this press conference, which I would say was riveting in its sadness. They pointed out the way that Mr. Kirk died. They also pointed out the fact that the bullet whizzed by the questioner. It was very close to the questioner and other people. So that's how dangerous the situation was. We learned new information about the DNA evidence that they believe ties them to the scene, that Tyler Robinson's DNA was found on the trigger of the gun that they believe was used in the attack, also on the cartridges themselves. And David, as you pointed out, the ordeal of the family, of the mother, looking at the photograph and the images that were released, thinking it was her son, calling her son, him allegedly saying that he was homesick, then turning to the father who agreed that it looked like the son, him following up with the son as well. I just can imagine the drama as it played out for that family and their critical role in this, David.
Especially because we have reported here, Pierre, that their son was a fairly good student, that this family was somewhat connected, and that they had had a dinner, a gathering, not long before this awful day unfolded right there in Utah, where the family allegedly has told authorities that he became more political in recent times, left-leaning politically, in which at one dinner they actually talked about Charlie Kirk.
Indeed, David. They appear to be living the quintessential American family life. Mother and father, close family, family meetings, dinners, and that's why they engaged him in the way that he did. It's clear that they said that there had been changes in the past few months and weeks where he'd become more left-leaning in their words, according to authorities today. And clearly, the relationship with the roommate, authorities, I'm told, are examining that in terms of the roommate who was transitioning from male to female, according to authorities, and his belief that Charlie Kirk, in their words, was sowing hate.
Peter Thomas in our Washington bureau. Let's get right to the room. And Matt Gutman, who asked a couple of those questions you saw at that news conference. Matt, again, the Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray saying what I laid out here today is what I would have had to file publicly anyway, indicated that he was very comfortable with the information he revealed here today.
I think he feels like he has a lot of information. I think you and Pierre both noted there is what they say is the DNA on the trigger of the murder weapon, those text messages, the other evidence that they've managed to gather from the scene. It's pretty damning. But what was very interesting about how Attorney Gray phrased this is that this is a suspect who in this system is still presumed innocent until we prove to a jury his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. He's very much trying to play by the rules here. And I asked him specifically about FBI Director Kash Patel sort of getting out in front of this investigation, revealing some of these key details that we've been talking about, that this group here in Utah, the DPS, the Department of Public Safety, has been very, very circumspect, trying to keep it close to the vest. He said, well, it doesn't exactly help us. We typically like to have more control over that information. It was sort of an oblique swipe at the director, but it does seem that they have a pretty significant amount of information. The other thing that stood out to me, David, is those text messages. I don't know if we have seen an alleged murder with such specific text messages about the alleged murder weapon, where it was hidden, how it was placed, what was on it, but also it was very touching in a way that I think many of us didn't expect. A very intimate portrait into this relationship between the suspect's roommate and the suspect himself, with him repeatedly calling his roommate who was transitioning, calling him my love, and I want to protect you, my love. So it was this duality of someone who the attorney said not only jeopardized the life of Charlie Kirk and the crowd, but was doing it in front of children, which is one of the aggravating circumstances of this case. And on the other hand, he was, speaking so lovingly about his partner. So a very interesting and, as Pierre said, riveting press conference, David.
It was Tyler Robinson, the man you speak of, now facing the death penalty. Jeff Gray, the Utah attorney, making that clear. Our thanks to Matt Gutman. A couple of key points that he was asked right at the end of the presser. Mr. Gray, did anyone else know about this? It has not been ruled out, he said. Is the suspect cooperating? He said he would not speak to that. Asked about the family as well. Also said he would not speak to that. Asked if he was remorseful. No comment on that. These are all questions the public likely very interested in as well. I want to bring in Catherine Falders with just a few moments left. Catherine, these text messages will figure large in this trial.
Yeah, they sure will. We got a glimpse, of course, into this digital footprint and all of these messages exchanged with this roommate. Of course, he talked about a note under his keyboard that police found a photograph of. It said specifically, I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. At the end of that press conference, they obviously wouldn't answer questions about whether that roommate, David, was still cooperating.
Right, Catherine Boulders, our thanks to you as well. We're going to be back on the air for Tyler Robinson's court appearance. It will be a virtual appearance, which, as you heard from the county attorney, is normal in this jurisdiction. It's scheduled for about 5 p.m. Eastern. Our coverage will continue ABC News Live, and when we see that, I'll be back on the air with you right here, and the entire team standing by for World News Tonight. I'm David Noor in New York. Good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
Okay, that's enough of that. Okay, and that's enough of that. Let's see what that surprise witness has for us.
She was reading from the press conference, so I'm kind of skimming through, but I'm going to stop on parts where I think we need to stop and think a little more. The event wasn't the first. A series of similar events we held at the college campuses online. The event was announced far in advance. Several hundred people were there. His team members were very close to him, to his right and left. A large crowd had gathered. 15 minutes into the event, Mr. Kirk was answering a question about mass shootings by transgender individuals when a gunshot rang out. Now, the fact that they did include what he was answering the question about, that does stand out to me. Now, someone asked at the press conference, does the question that was being asked at the time have anything to do with the shooting taking place? Is that just, is there anything there? The prosecutor declined to answer that question. So I think he actually said that'll have to be sorted out in court or at trial. Interesting to me. The bullet's trajectory passed closely to several other individuals besides Charlie Kirk, including the questioner, who was standing directly in front of Charlie Kirk. Children were visible near the stage where he was shot. Charlie was rushed to a nearby hospital. He was declared deceased. The medical examiner's report is pending. Okay, so the next section is the UVU surveillance investigation. At the moment of the shot, UVU police officers were watching the crowd from an elevated vantage point. As soon as he heard the shot, he began to scan the area for threats. The shot came from a rifle because of the sound. He looked for potential sniper positions. He noted a roof area approximately 160 yards away from Charlie Kirk as a potential shooting position and rushed there to look for evidence. The suspected shooting position is adjacent to an open, publicly accessible walkway. Let's see. The officer climbed over the railing down onto the roof. He walked the suspected shooting
Okay, so the
position.
officer climbed down.
Shot.
Okay.
Mr. Kirk would have been. Also noticed markings on a gravel rooftop. The rooftop had that gravelly stuff on it. So it was consistent with a sniper laying on the roof. Impressions on the gravel potentially left by the elbows, knees, and feet of a person in a prone shooting position. So there was like a snow angel of a sniper on the gravel on the roof. Okay. A gravel devil instead of a snow angel. Police reviewed surveillance from the camera covering the roof and discovered that it recorded an individual dressed in dark clothes cross the railing from public walkway, drop onto the roof at approximately 12:15 p.m. Although the individual moved out of the camera's view for a short time, the camera again captured the individual running across the roof and then low crawling to the area of the UVU officer recognized where the suspected sniper had dropped onto a prone shooting position. After a short time, which matches the known time of the shot, the individual arose and ran across the roof to the northeast. This discovery led to an intensive review of UVU surveillance recordings to attempt to track and identify the suspect. Surveillance revealed the following. Approximately 11:51 a.m., suspect entered campus from the north, seen wearing a black shirt, American flag on the shirt, dark baseball cap, large sunglasses. Throughout the surveillance, the suspect keeps his head down, rarely raises his head enough to get a clear image of his face. As he proceeds across the campus, he is seen walking with an unusual gait. The suspect walks with a very little bending in his right leg, consistent with a rifle being hidden in his pants. This unusual gait continues until the suspect is seen crossing the railing off the open walkway and onto the roof, where he leaves the campus. Another different camera later captures the suspect running across the roof to the suspected shooting position immediately after the shot is fired. Camera captures him running across the roof, carrying an item which shape is consistent with the rifle. He is then seen climbing down to the roof. He appears to drop the item he was carrying, hits the ground in a controlled fall, picks up the item, runs toward the northeast entrance. Okay. That's all pretty much, we already knew all that stuff. That's been told. Next section is called Expanded Crime Scene Investigation. Law enforcement officers followed the suspect's escape path to the northeast end of the campus where they believe the suspect left campus and entered a wooded area. In that wooded area, investigators found a bolt-action rifle wrapped in a towel. The rifle contained one spent round and 3 unspent rounds. This is consistent with the facts officers observed at the time of the immediately after the shooting. No shell casings were found on the roof, suggesting a bolt-action rifle on a loaded weapon. And only a single round was fired. Okay.
Okay, that's enough of that. Let's see what's said here.
Again, still under investigation.
And has he expressed any remorse so far about this?
I am not going to comment on that.
Is he not cooperate?
I am not going to comment on that.
Mr. Brady, the FBI director has been way out front in terms of presenting evidence to the public. Your team has been very circumspect, very measured in what they've let out. Has that hampered your investigation and the build-up to this?
Well, as attorneys, we typically like to control that information to preserve an impartial jury and a fair trial.
So has that representation? Is it clear yet?
Excuse me?
Does the suspect have a lawyer?
I don't have that information.
Can you tell us more about what the family may have said?
Hell, you ain't got nothing from what it sound like.
What the family said is what I provided.
Do you anticipate that the defense will try to get this trial moved out of Utah County, and how will you respond to that?
That from where?
From Utah County.
That the defense will be from Utah County?
That they will try to get the trial moved.
The venue moved.
I couldn't predict what they're going to do.
Is there any evidence to suggest that the timing of the shot and the question that was asked about mass shootings and transgender, is that more than coincidence?
That will be for a jury to decide.
Mr. Greg, are you confident that the roommate had no part of this attack whatsoever?
Again, I'm not going to comment on the evidence.
But the evidence so far is you show any involvement.
Again, I'm not going to comment on other than the facts that or the evidence that we've gathered so far.
Does the mention of the DNA here in the press conference jeopardize his right to a fair trial?
I don't believe so. This is part of a public document that we have to file as we file a criminal information. We have to file a probable cause statement. That's a public document, and so we're comfortable with that.
Are his parents and the roommate still cooperating?
I'm not going to comment on that either.
The FBI has said that the suspect had hatred of Kirk.
So in other words, you ain't gonna say nothing.
I can't share any more than what I've already said.
This is a very precise shot. Do you have any evidence that he went places to practice or had practice before the shooting that's given you
Oh
insight?
boy, don't know nothing.
The evidence that I'm willing to share is what I just read in our statement. It's in the information.
I think we're going to have to cut it off there.
Death penalty?
Okay.
If you could just answer, did you consult Erica Kirk about seeking the death penalty?
I'm not going to comment on that.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I'd like to welcome right now, following that press conference, former prosecutor, constitutional attorney Chris Ann Hall. What a great day to have a constitutional attorney, Chris Ann. Always great to have you on, because I thought he did a very absolutely. He did a very good job explaining that in the state of Utah they do not have a grand jury system, and so it's necessary that he files this information, and that's why it has so many details in it. The probable cause piece. Next, we expect the arraignment. That's later today, and then there can be motions, etc. before
Arraignment at 5 o'clock today.
Knowing that, comment on the fact there are 7 charges that have been included in the information, all the way from the aggravated murder and the felony discharge of a firearm down to witness tampering because of what he told his roommate. 2 counts of that, and then commission of a violent offense and the commission of the presence further of children. All of these charges against this defendant. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm a little uncomfortable at the level of oversharing of inculpatory evidence that they did in this hearing. There's a long-standing Supreme Court case called Shepard v. Maxwell from 1966 that deals with oversharing information, turning a trial into a trial of public opinion rather than a trial left to due process. Even though he made statements about whether that he didn't want to engage in jury tampering, the level of detail that he gave at this press conference is exactly the danger that's here. And if I'm a defense attorney, I'm bringing up Shepard v. Maxwell. I'm bringing up the overshare.
At Replit, we believe everyone should be able to create software without limits and without knowing how to code. Introducing Agent 3.
Sometimes you gotta give it all you got to finish strong.
And I thought the same thing. Part of what I thought was, how much of this is about the ongoing investigation versus the basic facts to say, yes, we have probable cause, we have to put that in the information and then share it. Do you think that it really crossed a line and gave a lot of information about the ongoing investigation that in some states we just wouldn't see revealed at this point?
100%, because remember, regardless of how we feel about this, and regardless of the emotion that comes out of this, the defendant has a right to due process. And telephone conversations and text messages and testimonies and investigations, they're all subject to challenge for Fourth Amendment violations, he has the right against self-incrimination. There are so many constitutional challenges that the prosecution is going to have to overcome before that level of evidence is actually admissible into court. And now, not only has it been disclosed publicly in an indictment, but this is one step further to actually disclose it in a public press conference.
And it's in the information, and as the county attorney laid out, he said, listen, I want to do everything because of the constitutional responsibilities to ensure a fair trial, to give the defendant all of his rights. And so it's an interesting place that we find ourselves in this state. All right, stand by, Chrisanne. We have to take a break. We are going to switch gears when we come back to the Florida pregnant mistress murder trial of Jose Soto Escalera, plus Scripps News Group's Alex Miller joining us live from New York with details on the charges dropped against suspect Luigi Mangione. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Young mother found brutally murdered.
Now the victim's boyfriend, a married father of 4,
is charged with the murder of his alleged mistress and her unborn child.
The pregnant mistress murder trial.
Is this it, or is there more?
Tonight, on closing arguments, the suspect in the shooting.
I'm trying to see if there's more, y'all. Hold on.
For the first time, we're live with the very latest as we break down today's hearing. Closing arguments tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Okay, I guess that's it. I do got something for y'all. Hold on. I'm gonna go to this Charlie Kirk stuff I got. Hold on. I got some more stuff for y'all. Got it. Some more surprise witness. Come on.
A bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there is a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I just don't want to chance it. I'm wishing I had circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm so worried at what my old man would do.
What are you most looking forward to at this Vid Summit?
Crap. There we go.
If I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. I don't know if it had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. I worry about prints, the fingerprints. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. Like, all of this is like a total, somebody asked at the news conference, would this count as a confession? And the prosecutor said that's going to be up to a court to decide. It's like the whole thing's just laid out so conveniently right here. It's just such a miracle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. I don't know if it had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace back to me. I worry about prints. I had to leave it, like fingerprints. I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. Didn't have the ability or time to bring it with me. I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find prints. How the F will I explain losing it to my old man? The only thing I left was the rifle. Remember how
I'll be right back, y'all. Home.
It's doing that. It's just a one-man show. No one else is involved. What a miracle. The effing messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notices, bold,
And this here says surprise witness.
I might have a stroke. All right, I'm gonna have to leave it. This really effing sucks. Judging from today, I would say Grandpa's gun doesn't. Oh my God. Holy. This is sick. He says, remember how I was engraving bullets? The effing messages are mostly a big meme. If I see, quote, notices bulge, ooh woo, on Fox News, I might have a stroke, alright? I'm gonna have to leave it. That really effing sucks. Judging from today, I'd say Grandpa's gun does just fine. I don't know. I think that was like a $2,000. Then he says, delete this exchange. My dad wants photos of the rifle. He says Grandpa wants to know who was what. Oh, sorry, excuse me. He says Grandpa wants to know who has what. The feds released a photo of the rifle, and it is very unique. He's calling me right now. I'm not answering. Since Trump got, now this dot means there's other exchange. There's other text messages that are leaking out. See, he goes on, since Trump got into office, my dad has been pretty diehard MAGA. I'm going to turn myself in willingly. One of my neighbors here is a deputy for the sheriff. You are all I worry about, love. I'm much more worried about you. Don't talk to the media, please. Don't take any interviews or make any comments. This sounds like lawyer talk. If any police asks you questions, ask for a lawyer and stay silent. Okay, so that's the roommate section. Pretty sus. I don't know, maybe, I don't know, just, I don't know 22-year-old boys, like from when I was 22-year-old men to talk like that, but like, I don't know, it's like a whole new generation now. It's like post, it's post-WAP, it's post-COVID. The next section is the search of Robinson's residence. Police executed a search warrant on Robinson's residence. During the search, police discovered a shell casing with etchings, like the etchings found in the shells in the rifle near Uru. They found another shell casing. Okay, so this is a big finding, or this is a big piece of breaking news. You know, you have to really like kind of read through it all. They found another shell casing at the residence of Heinrich. So they found those 3 in the gun, 1 spent, 3 unspent, and then they also found this specific shell casing in the home. It had the etchings on it, just like the etchings found on the shells in the rifle near the university where the incident happened. Police also found several targets with bullet holes in Robinson's home, so this would indicate he was doing some target practice. Police also found several targets. Okay, count 1, aggravated murder, pertains to shooting and killing Charlie Kirk in a manner that exposed others, in addition to Mr. Kirk, to great risk of death. Count 2, felony discharge of a firearm, pertains to Robinson's shooting toward Mr. Kirk, knowing that doing so would endanger those in the bullet's path. The shot caused serious bodily injury to Kirk, ultimately resulting in his death. Count 3, obstructing justice, removing and hiding the rifle. Count 4, obstructing justice, removing and hiding the clothes that he wore. Count 5, witness tampering to the roommate, telling him to delete text messages after the shooting. And count 6 is also witness tampering, also to the roommate lover, telling the roommate, if any police ask you questions, ask for a lawyer and stay silent. Count 7, violent offense was committed in front of a child. Based upon the evidence received from Brian Davis, Utah Bureau of Investigations, I have reason to believe that been committed in the offense charged here. Okay. So that was the New York Times reporting on the article, and they were really putting up there what, pretty much the script that the guy read from. Now, there's like some updates on, let me show y'all. There's updates on the news, but I really think it's like pretty much exactly what I already just read. But let's check and see. They may be reporting other things here. Thanks so much to Veronica Romero for the $4.99 super chat. Why is he so specific? Why can't we get information like this about other shootings? It's a very, very good question. Thank you for that $4.99. Shout out to Antoine the Great, member. Thanks so much, Veronica, again for the $4.99 super chat again. We got sold to Israel and Charlie knew it. It's starting to make me wonder, I'm wondering. Um, So this is just stuff we just already read. The mom told police her son moved to the left politically. According to the charging documents, Tyler's roommate and romantic partner discovered Robinson carry out the Kirk shooting when he sent a text saying, "Drop what you're doing, look under my keyboard." The partner got a note. Investigators are reluctant to talk further about the case. He nodded to potential challenges in trying to find an impartial jury in Utah County given the level of emotion and news media coverage. That jury cannot rely on our allegations on what they hear in the news. That's what the prosecutor said. Jeff Gray said he had talked to officials from both the governor's office and the Trump administration before filing the charges, but he said the decision to seek the death penalty was his and his alone. He also would not comment on details of the case that have been shared publicly by Kash Patel, the embattled FBI director, or he also would talk about the suggestion that there could be other people charged in relation to the killing. We typically like to control that information to preserve an impartial jury. But it does look like they could be considering other people. They didn't really rule out a lot of the stuff. They just said they're not going to answer it. Engravings on the bullet casings were mostly a big lead, the suspect says, and messages included in charging documents. The engravings found on the shell casings found in the rifle of the shooting of Charlie Kirk referenced the meanings, the county attorney said. The county attorney, reading from charging documents against the suspect, said that one round was fired and DNA consistent with the defendant was found on the trigger, as well as on other parts of the rifle and various cartridge casings. The notices bulge, "Ooh, what's this?" was engraved on the fired bullet. Remember how I was engraving bullets? Tyler allegedly supposedly said. The effing messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notices bulge, "Ooh, woo," on Fox, I might have strip on me. 4 other unspent casings also have engravings. Now, we don't know what that other one that they found at his house had on. Left a note. Okay, yes. Utah County uses an information filing, not an indictment, to charge him. Prosecutors in Utah County have charged him with killing Charlie Kirk through an information document rather than an indictment. An information document is a formal accusation filed by a prosecutor, while an indictment is a formal accusation filed by a grand jury. So the information document is a prosecutor filed document, a grand jury document, an indictment is that a grand jury has sat there and done this. That didn't happen in this case. Context, an information court document allows prosecutors to directly charge someone. It requires a probable cause hearing where a judge will determine if there's enough evidence to proceed. Utah County Attorney says he has been measured in sharing details to ensure an impartial jury and a fair trial. The county attorney was asked why his office has been measured in sharing investigation information about the Charlie Kirk killing, in stark contrast to the FBI director, who's been more prompt. The state attorney guy said, well, as attorneys, we typically like to control that information to preserve an impartial jury and a fair trial. Now, I don't know if that's big. Is Kash Patel not an attorney? Patel's handling of the assassination has frustrated and angered people both inside and outside the FBI. Patel, who had posted on Wednesday that a subject was in custody, claimed he had to walk back less than 2 hours later. Patel's style also struck the FBI employees as not in keeping with how previous FBI directors handled similar situations. 20 minutes ago, charges have been filed. What happens next? The suspect of the killing will make his first court appearance today, just hours after the charges were announced. The suspect will appear virtually before a judge at Utah's 4th District Court, so he's not going to be there in person. He will be informed of the charges and to ensure that he has legal representation. The hearing will be brief. Charging documents do not currently list an attorney for him. He will be entitled to a preliminary hearing sometime after the first appearance. This will be during which that hearing, the state must show probable cause that he committed the crimes. The purpose of the preliminary hearing is not to determine guilt, it's simply assure the court that the prosecution has enough evidence to proceed to trial. The judge does find that probable cause exists, and finds the case over for trial, and arraignment will then be held. Okay, so this is just only, this is not an arraignment.
Okay, sorry about it, y'all.
So it's just like a charging hearing where they're going to
Okay, I'm back.
So let's see what time that is going to be. Because
Oh Lord,
I
I'm back.
did go, let me show you all this. I did go to the website. Court website.
Hopefully y'all learn something that surprise witness.
9/16 at 3 p.m. and will be held virtually. Robinson will not be there in person. To view the hearing live, please watch or read updates from your preferred news outlets. So 3 p.m. over their time, am I an hour ahead? Or what is Utah time? What is Utah time?
It's 5 Eastern, darling.
So that's going to be an hour and a half. Okay, so 3 p.m. I'll come back on here and we'll do that. It is going to just be a short hearing. I wanted to keep this one short. I know my lives are going to short. And I'll really come back for that later. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. We'll do some more updates later. Meantime, vaccine definition in your opinions. Let me goodbye. Yes, thank you.
Well, while she's done, I'm going to start this.
I picked the public affairs program because I'd already had almost 20 years in public administration. Knowing that I could attend from Oregon to get the same degree at Arizona was such a great opportunity that I didn't think I could pass it by.
When I was using Jobber, it felt like I was overpaying for a system that wasn't built for guys like me. There was no property measurement, no review automation, and no self-booking for customers, just a bunch of stuff that I didn't use. Then I switched over to QuoteIQ and everything changed. I measure driveways and roofs all on my phone with Map Measure Pro, and I use Instant Quote.
We have breaking news. Conservative activist Charlie Kirk has been killed after being shot in the neck at an outdoor rally on the campus of Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. We have the latest confirmed information in this special breaking edition of On the Case presented by Law and Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Breaking details are still coming in on this story. President Donald Trump just said that Charlie Kirk, the conservative activist, is dead after he was shot at an event today outside Salt Lake City in Orem, Utah. Here's the post on Truth Social the president put out, writing that the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. He was loved and admired by all, especially me, and now he is not here with us. Melania, my sympathies go out to his beautiful wife Erica and family. Charlie, we love you. Now, Charlie Kirk was a conservative activist, very active on social media, and a major supporter of Donald Trump. He became one of the young faces of the MAGA movement, and he was one of the founders of Turning Point USA, a major political nonprofit that advocated for conservative causes. Kirk had been on his American comeback tour. He was going to colleges across the country and speaking on campus. And one of those stops today at Utah Valley University. It's in Orem, Utah. It's about 45 minutes south of Salt Lake. And it's a school of about 45,000 kids, and thousands of people were listening to Kirk speak at the time that he was shot. Now, at the time of this reporting, police say a suspect is still on the loose. Originally, there was a campus alert that went out saying that there was a suspect in custody. Then you had videos circulating on social media of an older man being detained. It is unclear what the circumstances were around that, but it is being reported that man is not the shooter who killed Charlie Kirk. A school spokesperson told the New York Times that a single shot was fired at Kirk from a building on campus about 200 yards away from where Kirk was seated. According to the school as well, Kirk was taken by his security team off of campus. Now, there is video circulating on social media of the shooting and of the moment that Charlie Kirk was killed. And we cannot show you that video. It is just too graphic to show it here.
Thank God you guys, please do
but in
not
that
show
video, you
that.
can see that Kirk is hit. He reacts to being shot, falling out of his chair. You can hear that single gunshot being fired. You also see the bullet hit Kirk in the video, and you see blood leave his body. Then there's just chaos of the thousands of students and people who came to hear him speak, running for safety. Now, one of our employees at Law and Crime has a family member who goes to Utah Valley University, and here are the text messages that they sent to each other in the moments after this shooting. You can see that she says that she's okay. Quote, "I'm hiding right now. I love you." She explained there was a shooting and that she was okay, but she also said that the school was now on lockdown and that she was in hiding with other people. Earlier today, right as this news was breaking, I spoke to retired FBI agent Colin Schmidt. We spoke before the news broke that Kirk was dead. And at the time, it was being reported that a shooter was in custody. And we talked a lot about what this investigation will look like going forward and what charges a shooter, if and when they're arrested, what they could face. Here's our conversation. Joining us now is retired FBI agent Colin Schmidt. Always great to have you on Law and Crime, and thanks for being with us as so much information is developing right now. We know that there are students that are in lockdown right now on this campus, or those who are responding to this now with law enforcement. What are they doing at this point of the response?
Well, from what I understand online, they may have already have a suspect in custody, but one of the big problems when you have a shooting in an outdoor venue is you have self-employment and lots of law enforcement showing up to the scene and basically having to be organized. So most likely the Utah State Police already set up a command post to bring the people to the one spot where they can organize their crime scene investigators, and then they're going to basically span out, start interviewing people, and determine whether he's a lone shooter or there's more people involved in a conspiracy.
And that was going to be my next question is the, and I know law enforcement trains for this, but there's that chaos of so many people that were in this like college quad. They're running. This one person, it appears, we don't know his identity at this point, is in custody. How do you make sure in all of that chaos that there isn't someone else who is part of this?
Well, you really can't. When you have, looks to be about 5,000 to 10,000 people running in all different directions. The only thing you do is you got to start at the source, which is the shooter. They have him immediately identified. It looks like he may have made the shot from within the crowd, and the people probably it's going to come out that people around him took him into custody, so to speak, or held him. But then the next step would be to do a logical investigation in terms of interviewing him, get his cell phone, do some cell phone analytics, and then talk to the people around there, and then frankly to determine if there is somebody that financed him or put him up to this, or if he's just a lone shooter.
So all of this is just for people who are watching this. I mean, this story broke probably for us within the last 10 or 15 minutes, so it's really within the hour. It appears that this has happened. How quickly do you start asking questions of that suspect?
Well, they're going to have to be careful because you don't want to prompt him to lawyer up, so to speak, even though that is his right. You want to get some professionals there, get him in a car, get him aside, and basically start talking to him immediately to get a confession, so to speak. He's in custody, so it'll be an interrogation. He has to be read his Miranda rights. And basically, the most important thing for them to find out is was he alone or is there more people? From the pictures online, if that indeed is the suspect, he looked to be about 65 to 70, white male, older gentleman. So I suspect he's a lone shooter, and this has been something that's brewing within him for a long time, and then they're gonna find all those things out.
Because I also think, too, because I saw that same picture, and we're not showing it at this point because we don't know officially if this is the person. And we've seen in some cases, I think the Kansas City Chiefs parade shooting, that there was someone who actually wasn't arrested for it. So that picture is going around on social media. And if he is the person, I think for law enforcement, it would be a challenge where here he is on the ground and you have people who you want to almost get away so they aren't. I could understand they would be really angry at this person and would want to go at him, and you want to make sure you have your suspect. Then at the same time, these could be witnesses. How do you handle the chaos of that moment?
Well, the first thing is to ensure there is no chaos. So they're going to write you in lots of support. More officers uniform officers are going to get in there. They're going to do crowd control. and then they're going to interview the people that most likely put their hands on him or were around him, because they're going to be around, because ultimately it's kind of just common sense. They're going to say, hey, does anybody know what happened? And being that event is very partisan, there's going to be people that are going to be happy to talk, happy to cooperate with law enforcement. And then from there, you just build on that, because most of the times when people go to events like this, they don't go alone. They go with a couple of friends. And so somebody's going to know somebody who saw something. And then from there, you're just going to do the investigation.
There's pictures, images, videos circulating on social media of the moment that Charlie Kirk was shot. It appears he was shot in the neck. According to the school, and an alert that it was a single gunshot from the crowd, from a suspect now believed to be in custody. There's probably about 5,000 people, let's say, who were watching this speech. I think it was the Q&A session. For whether it's private security that's there or police that are there, I mean, how do you actually scan a crowd to try and spot someone who might be armed and trying to do something like this?
Well, I mean, you're going to use common sense. You're going to go to the sound and then the muzzle flash or the smoke. And so it most likely it appears that if he is the guy that did it, there was people around him who saw him pull out the long
There's
rifle
just something
or
to
whatever. It just doesn't look like
fill
it
us
was a
in
shot
until
from a handgun. And they
5 o'clock.
frankly detained him. And then from there, law enforcement will come in and do their investigation.
And for these political events, I mean, to your point, I mean, Turning Point, it's a very partisan group, conservative politics. This is not a rock concert. This is a political rally that was going on. For law enforcement in the area, what is the preparation like in the days leading up to it? And I know he's on tour right now, so he's been at a lot of different colleges. But even in the days leading up to this speech, or the speech I think he was going to be in Colorado next, what is the preparation like ahead of an event where you know it's going to be very emotionally charged?
Well, in something like this, I mean, technically he's not a protectee like the president or somebody else. So it's going to be up to individually each department and how they want to handle it. They're going to get from the Utah or from the school the agenda and to see when he's there, when he's coming in, and then they'll probably do some scanning of social media to see if there's any threats or anything out there. And then Charlie Kirk, he has his own security staff, hopefully, that they're going to be doing some threat assessment to see if there's anybody, any stalkers, anybody that's following them around. But the problem with an event like that is law enforcement doesn't have the resources to set up a perimeter and scan people through a metal detector like they would with the Secret Service. So, and even then, obviously, Donald Trump was shot. So these events now, it's looking like we're kind of moving into an era of political assassination. Actually, we've already moved into that era. And I fear for all of these public figures, especially on the right side of what is coming down the pipe.
Because I think for these events, and it's, to your point, you can't scan every single person coming through in some of these outdoor venues. And like we saw in Butler, Pennsylvania with President Trump, there can be breakdowns in the security. But I also think of, private security teams, the cost of all of that leading up to it. I guess how, and I know that this is a question that we won't be able to solve right here, but at this point where people are very outspoken, it's their right, even if you disagree with their political beliefs, to hold these events and hold them peacefully. How do we do these events, but then at the same time, not have situations like this where someone who is armed and angry can show up and do something?
Indoor events, you're going to have to use basketball stadiums, closed stadiums where you have access control, and you don't have to set up extra fencing and all that other stuff. And then all of those venues already have their own metal detectors, and they're already set up for large crowds, and they're already set up to prevent people from bringing firearms into an event. So all of these events are going to have to go indoors if they really want to pay attention to security.
What's the process when you have this person who commits this crime, and if it's this person that we see on social media who did it or somebody else, let's just say they don't have ID on them, how do you figure out who they are?
Well, just talk to them, number one. I mean, they're going to do an FI or a field interview of him, and those aren't under Miranda, and basically ask him what's your name, who you are, and most likely he's going to have some sort of ID on him, a wallet or whatever, and then, of course, his cell phone. And then get his consent to open the cell phone, and then you're going to see his whole life history right there. And then the next step would be, and it appears the FBI is going to getting involved here rather quickly, that he may end up being turned over to a team with that's combined FBI and Utah State Police or whoever the law enforcement is, and they'll interview or interrogate him together to make sure that they don't leave any stone unturned.
Charlie Kirk is a influencer, an activist. He's not a politician, an elected official that would be under a federal employee. But the FBI getting involved in this politically motivated attack, what does it look like as far as federal charges compared to charges in Utah?
I think in a case like this, it'll be they're going to look at civil rights because it's most likely this person went after Charlie Kirk because of his political views, and that may dovetail into a civil rights violation, as well as I'd have to look at the statute book or on the internet to see if there's any statutes in terms of assassination attempts, because he's not a sitting president or a former president or a member of the first family. But bottom with this administration, they'll definitely find a way to charge him, in my opinion, federally.
Yeah, they will.
Look at him, and then
This administration, they will.
put charges on him. So
They gonna throw the book at
It's
him.
likely that this gentleman will probably never see the light of day outside.
He won't.
No, and I think too,
Now that Trump got something to say about it.
President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, and then even when he was on the golf course in West Palm Beach, and that was a threat that was stopped. This event with Charlie Kirk, you could go back to Gabby Giffords, what happened to her at her campaign event. These political figures are, elected or not, they have become major targets, and there's been a lot of attention on the Secret Service, local police. We often hear about training for school shootings as well. Just in your career and your time with the FBI, how did the training change, or maybe the focus on these types of events change, just as more of these events have seemed to happen?
Well, in mid-career, we started the active shooter training in response to Columbine, and then that active shooter training began to get more sophisticated. So each agent has active shooter training, whether it be in the academy or when they get into the field. So that's the biggest piece, where even, it used to be FBI agents weren't the ones that were going to be responding to this stuff. Now they understand that any law enforcement, any state, federal, or local, has to be prepared for an active shooter, which is what this gentleman was, and be trained on how to neutralize that threat.
What are some of the pieces of evidence that you need to collect? Because there's going to be a ton of witnesses who have seen this guy do it. All that evidence is there. Likely they have the weapon that was used. But what are the other pieces of evidence you're going to need in this case?
Well, it's going to be anything in his pockets. They're going to put a timeline together from basically when he shot, and then go back most likely 48 hours or 72 hours, and then every minute of his life they're going to endeavor to, for the last 72 hours, they're going to try to identify what exactly, where he was and who he was speaking with, and then that will be another subset of the evidence that they're going to collect, is the interviews of anybody he interacted with prior to the event or online and via social media. And then that's the other one, is most likely this guy's going to have a big viewing history of political events, and that will also go to the evidence of whether what his intent was. And frankly, the intent is basically where the federal law and the state law, for that matter, will really come into play, and what they can charge him with. Federal law and the state law, for that matter, will really come into play, and what they can charge him with.
And with I think of Miranda rights, and if he's making statements before you give him his Miranda rights, maybe he had something he wanted to say when he did this. Where does it come into the line when you're searching someone, where you're allowed to search him, take those things off of him, and then at what point does it become something where your access to this suspect is cut off because maybe he lawyers up and it's after you've given your Miranda rights to him?
Well, you're talking about spontaneous admissions, and most of those cops, if not all of them, have body cameras. So if he did do that, it's going to be recorded. In terms of his for Terry or the Supreme Court Terry stop, you can search him for public safety or officer safety, and then at that point, anything that's on his body will be brought, will be put aside. But to search the phone, unless he gives consent, they're going to have to get a search warrant for the phone, which won't be a problem. And then the next step would be get search warrants for anywhere he lived or where he's been in the last 72 hours.
Then if the FBI is involved in this and they're looking into his history, you have the local campus police, you might have Utah State Police that were involved in this. When it comes to interrogating him later today or whenever that happens, who is the person who'd be sitting across from him in the room?
Well, the FBI can't just walk in and take over. That's something from the 70s in the movies. They have to be, and they already have a relationship with the Utah State Police as well as the campus police. And many times in my career, those are some of my best friends, were the cops that I work with. So they're gonna ask if can they participate, and it's up to whoever is in controlling the prosecution to determine who's going to be in that interview room. Now, if the U.S. Attorney's Office or the federal government takes it over, well, then they can insist on the FBI taking a lead. But I can almost guarantee there's going to be a local law enforcement officer in that interrogation room, along with potentially an FBI agent and also the ATF. They're there as well, and they have a seat at the table.
And we'll see how all of this plays out. A lot of this story still developing right now out of Orem, Utah. Retired FBI agent Colin Schmidt. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
All right. Thank you.
We will continue to keep a close eye on this story. Continue to follow us here at Law and Crime. That will do it for this breaking news edition of On the Case presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.
What if employer-sponsored insurance, group insurance, packages often come with rising costs, and more important, breaking news in the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, a person of interest, was in custody but then released. That was Kirk, just before an assassin took his life doing what he had done thousands of times before, talking to college students when he was murdered in front of a crowd of hundreds.
Are you voting for Kamala? I am. Okay, what is her...
I have the details of the arrest that ended up not happening. Welcome to this breaking edition of Crime Fix. I'm Anjanette Levy. I was going to tell you about an arrest being made in the murder of Charlie Kirk, but that ended up not happening. A person of interest was taken into custody and questioned, but then released. And this is actually the second false start in the case in just a matter of hours. Charlie Kirk was a conservative activist who woke up this morning and traveled to the campus of Utah Valley University in Orem to speak to college students. It was something that Kirk loved to do. He was the founder of Turning Point USA, and he had done this thousands of times before. Take a look. Kirk then took his seat under a tent and started to speak to the students, taking questions. It was 20 minutes into the event, around 12:20 Mountain Time, when someone in the crowd asked a question about gun violence, and at that very moment, the assassin fired. Kirk was hit in the neck. I'm not going to show the video to you. It's horrific. This 31-year-old husband and father of 2 young children started to bleed out immediately. Students ducked in horror, screaming. Kirk's bodyguards rushed him into an SUV in the hope of saving his life, and he was taken to the hospital, but nothing could be done. A man was detained, and it appeared a suspect was in custody immediately, but then that person was released. Then later, FBI Director Kash Patel tweeted,
The subject for the horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk is now in custody. Thank you to the local and state authorities in Utah for your partnership with the FBI. We will provide updates when able. But guess what? Patel's information did not pan out. Patel later tweeted, "The subject in custody has been released after an interrogation by law enforcement. Our investigation continues, and we will continue to release information in interest of transparency." So the search for the shooter continues. Charlie Kirk leaves behind a wife, Erica, and 2 young children. Earlier this year, Erica Kirk posted a video on TikTok thanking Charlie for, quote, "being my love story." To discuss this just horrific turn of events, I would like to bring in Bob McEwen. He is a friend of Charlie Kirk's, and he is also a former congressman from the state of Ohio and a board member at Turning Point USA. Bob, first and foremost, my condolences go out to you and everybody at Turning Point and Charlie Kirk's family. How are you doing upon hearing of this news that he's been assassinated? He was murdered.
That's exactly correct. He really was. He gave his life. He impacted the nation more than anyone his age ever. He's like the president. There's no two of them. And it's hard to grasp where we are. He was winsome. He spoke truth. He had nothing to fear. He would just go on a college campus and sit in a chair and just share truth about life, liberty, the right to pursue happiness, and a firm commitment to his Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. He was uncompromising, which then knew that the haters would come after him. He had security, but we hope that this day would never come. And certainly for Erica and the children, I know how upset and distressed I am just to think how they must feel. It's a horrible few hours that we've endured.
You said that he had security, which, obviously was a good thing, but, were there ever threats that he had received? Was he concerned about his safety, especially after what happened with President Trump and Butler, during the campaign? He's sitting out in these open-air venues. Had he ever talked to you about being concerned for his safety or receiving threats?
The thing is that truth overcomes error. And error cannot tolerate truth. Error can speak with error, and they can just go on and have white papers and discussions and conferences. But once truth enters the room, they all turn on the truth. They have to only the left burns books, and only the left censors. And so he knew that his life was under threat on a regular basis, just really daily. And of course, we've talked about it. He could never take his children to the grocery store or never walk in the park alone. And Erica signed on to that program, recognizing that preserving the greatest hope in the history of mankind, the United States of America, was a noble calling, and he was willing to make that sacrifice. But as you can see, it was one bullet, a person prepared to take him out, and that assassin, who obviously was a hater, and he had to silence truth, because when Charlie had people talk about these things and they began to logically think, it made a tremendous change. We've always said that young people, you really didn't need to worry about them until after they got married, after they became parents, and after they got a job, that they would all become conservatives eventually. So just let them talk about socialism and communism and things when they're young. But Charlie didn't believe that. He said, no, let's do it. Let's talk right now. And the shift has taken place that we've never seen, certainly in any of our lifetimes. That the most conservative demographic is 18 to 25. And there's no small responsibility that he did that across the nation. And began to stand up after all of the lies that went on about COVID, and you need to stand so many feet apart, and you can't be there for your parents' funerals, and all of these things that the young people began to question. Now, what is that? When they questioned, he was there with truth, and truth was winning, and that's why they had to take him out.
Where were you when you heard that he had been shot?
Well, I was at my desk.
And even this guy here at the time was trying to blame, quote unquote, the left for why Charlie Kirk is no longer here. It was not the left. It was a deranged man who took him out. Point blank period of discussion.
And I got a call from his chief of staff and mentioned that he had just been shot and it was in the neck and he wasn't sure. They had no more information than that. And it was a good 15 to 20 minutes after that it then broke on the news that he had been fired upon.
In the Champions League, every picture tells a story, and every great story.
That he had been fired upon, and then we prayed, hopeful that he would survive, because I repeat, there's no two like him. There's no one to take his place, but nevertheless, so I'm reaching out to the staff. Obviously, lives have been upended. That was the goal, and all we can do is we think about what the president went through, and they made 2 attempts to get at him as well. And of course, we'll see who's responsible for it. Our nation was blessed by his service and his commitment to righteousness, as our John Adams said about our Constitution, was made for a moral and a religious people. It's wholly inadequate to the government of any other. And so when his commitment and our commitment to preserving life, there are those that just, that arouses such hatred that we've experienced it today, unfortunately.
This is clearly a political assassination. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He was at an event he had hosted hundreds, if not thousands of times on college campuses, and somebody laid in wait to take his life. Do you expect federal charges to come of this? I would think possibly there would be, just because of the political nature of this.
Well, that's what's encouraging. We do have a Department of Justice that is interested in justice. And while that wouldn't be such a critical point in a state like Utah, where they have common sense, but in places like New York, or the whole idea that they couldn't incarcerate people in North Carolina is why that stabbing took place. We have the same thing in California, and where you don't incarcerate people, that they have what are called cashless bail. Cashless bail means that there is no bail. It's like saying when you steal a car, you can say it's a cashless purchase. So those people are allowed to roam boldly. But in Utah, I think that they would have done a good job. But nevertheless, fortunately, we have a Department of Justice under our current president that will make sure that justice is done. And so he's being prosecuted under federal law. And under federal law, there is also the death penalty, as the scripture provides.
You gave the toast at Charlie Kirk's wedding. I mean, you were very close to him. You were a Turning Point USA board member. I mean, you'd known him for a really long time. I mean, just talk to me about that relationship.
Well, I repeat, there aren't two people like him. He was a full-time learner. He took 2 hours every day to learn. He began his day faithfully with exercise and time in the scriptures. Then he went to an education of, whether it be on Hillsdale or whatever, reading a book for 2 hours every day. And then he ran a massive organization, $100 million, over 1,000 employees just in the last election. And massive. A lot of people, they say they do a lot of things, but he actually did them. And as a result, I remember, as you know, under the last president, there was this effort to incarcerate anybody that was a conservative. We were at dinner one time. My wife asked all the people at the table, had anyone there not had the FBI come knock on their door, and no one. All these are all people that you'd recognize their names. I remember when the FBI came to my door, and of course the purpose that they do that is because it always costs you 6 figures or more just to respond to them. Not that you've ever done anything. We just wanted to talk. And I remember when they first came to our door, and under the last Department of Justice, which was so corrupt. And I remember Charlie said, "Bob, I'm with you. I've got your back." He was an ultimate friend. I thought, here's this little young fellow, younger than my children, and he was just so steady and so strong And the President of the United States, and indeed an entire nation, relied upon him for his strength. And you're seeing the reaction across the country. And the difficulty is young people. As you know, all of us that went to school, we all know that if you were conservative, you were deeply in the minority. And that was the case up until just about 18 months ago or 20 months when it began to turn. But now you see when he shows up, just 2 years ago, turning point, when we would try to book him into a venue, the left-wing universities would make it impossible to speak. And if he was attacked, they wouldn't interfere, they wouldn't protect him when they were shouted down, and all the things that the left does to truth, because truth overcomes error. And so they have to shout them down, they have to silence them, they have to prevent them, drive people away. But about 18 months ago, all of that began to become so overwhelming that the kids began to show up in such numbers that they weren't able to do that anymore. And as you saw just today, that when the crowd, over 3,000 kids as far as you could see, and the difficulty at that venue was the sound was not strong enough for all of the people that were there. There is a change that's taking place to our country. You see it religious, spiritually, churches, particularly Catholic churches, but many churches there's a growth. Bible sales this year are up 22% over last year. Young people are turning back to faith and to faith in their country. And he played no small part in that. And if that's doubted at all, I think you can ask any kid on any campus, and they can say, yes, I thought I was alone a couple years ago. Now I see, because of what Charlie said and did, I can see that I wasn't alone. People began to show up. And that's what's so encouraging about America. It's so excited. I'm more positive about our country I've ever been in my life. And that's why the haters are just so frightened, because they see America being restored to its roots. And he gave his life for that cause. He gave his life for that cause.
Bob, you had mentioned earlier Charlie Kirk's wife, Erica, just a beautiful woman. He has these beautiful children. I just can't even imagine what she is going through tonight.
Well, she is an exceptional woman. They've made great efforts to reach the young people. My two granddaughters just went to the conference in July in Texas, in which young, successful females got up and talked about purity before marriage, and the privileges of being a wife and mother, and having children, and all of the things that bring genuine happiness, which of course the left diminishes. And I think about Erica. She was bright and talented, and when she was being interviewed for a job at Turning Point, it was a very beneficial circumstance for Charlie, because it was a high position, and they went out and for over 2 hours he asked basic questions. How do you stand on this, and how do you feel about that? And at the very end, she said, well, what do you think? And he said, let me tell you, I'm not going to hire you, but with your permission, I would like to date you. And so she went back, and her girlfriends and her mother and everybody said, how'd it go? And she said, I don't know. But they felt very, very deeply in love. They're just two wonderful, exceptionally mature people, American citizens. She's a daily communicant to her church, and it's a tragedy that we must remember her in prayer and uphold her to have these babies, and now to be alone.
I can't even imagine, and my heart goes out to her. I don't care what your politics are. This is a tragedy, and it's horrible. It should not have happened. Bob McEwen, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for caring.
And again, at the time of this recording, that second person of interest who was questioned and detained was released. So the search for the shooter is continuing. Charlie Kirk was just 31 years old. We will continue to follow this story and keep you updated on all of the developments. I'm Anjanette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me for this edition of Crime Fix. I'll see you back here next time.
Receiving the NC Lottery Scholarship completely changed how I looked at the world. I was very much on the fence about going to school. Having this scholarship kind of just broadened my horizons to like what I can access. More than anything, I just wanted to work in fashion, but I just didn't really have a lot of...
The FBI has just released this photo of a person of interest in connection with the horrific killing of Charlie Kirk from yesterday. And this comes as they provided new updates and evidence today as they race to find this assassin. The conservative influencer was in the middle of debating a member of the public during an outdoor event at Utah Valley University when a single bullet ripped through his neck. Chaos, confusion, a shot that has been heard around the world. We are going to break down what we just heard with former FBI and CIA agent Tracy Walder. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Charlie Kirk, the co-founder of Turning Point USA, a stalwart friend to some of the most well-positioned people in our government, and yes, a controversial online presence with millions of followers, is dead at the age of 31. This is a dark day for our country. I talked about this on social media yesterday. I'm going to say it again. We cover some of the worst evils in this country almost daily, and I was still sickened and shocked and disgusted by what I saw yesterday. And I just tell everybody out there, please think about and pray for Charlie Kirk's family and friends, because they are now left with the new reality of pain and loss and confusion that victims' family members deal with every day in this country. This married father of two, he is credited with rallying young Republican voters during the 2024 presidential election. He had this famous debate-style events at colleges around the country, drawing praise from some, criticism from others, and this was his final one. It was during one of those college events on Wednesday that Kirk was shot and killed. And again, we are about to get into what the FBI just said. But it appears, based on their comments, that this may be a lone gunman. A lone gunman who was atop a roof near the heart of Utah Valley University's campus in Orem. And we are learning, again, new details about that shooter right now from public safety officials and the FBI. We are going to show you the brand new press footage, and I'm going to be bringing on former FBI and CIA agent Tracy Walder to break down what these new developments mean, the potential evidence, how they're going to analyze it. Are we closer to actually catching the suspected shooter? We'll talk about it, but here's what we know. You had event goers who were lined up in an outdoor area to ask this conservative activist questions. Questions about things like gun violence and gender identity. And Kirk has this often, these answers that are booming over a microphone at the Quad. There's a lot of political excitement there. But again, controversial figure. And the New York Times reports that 3,000 people had turned out to see Kirk speak as he started another round of college tours. This one was called the American Comeback. Now, Kirk was seated underneath a canopy. He was surrounded by these metal barricades with his own personal security nearby. We can have a separate conversation, and maybe we will, about potentially the lack of security. But as seen in videos that were posted to social media, a member of the public standing just a few feet away was questioning Kirk about recent gun violence in America.
So, do you know how many transgender Americans have been mass shooters over the last 10 years?
Too many.
Okay, now 5 is a lot, right? I'm gonna give you some credit. Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?
Counting or not counting gang violence?
And at that moment, there was the sound of a single gunshot, and Charlie Kirk fell. If you've seen the videos online, they are awful. We have seen this video. It was taken by people in the crowd. It shows the moment that a bullet literally tore through Kirk's neck, sending him sprawling to the ground. It is horrific. He was carried to a nearby vehicle. He was rushed to the hospital. It was only a few miles away, but he was pronounced dead. And Utah officials would later say that they believed that this was a targeted attack, one bullet, one victim.
Now, people at the event, they scattered in all directions. They were screaming. They were falling over another. They were falling over one another. They were trying to figure out where the shots were coming from and if more bullets would be fired. The shooter was reportedly on the roof of a nearby campus building, the Losi Center. It's about 150 to 200 yards away from the gathering on the quad. And an unverified video that was posted to social media, it appears to show a person laying down on top of the building. Now, law enforcement has not confirmed this video, nor have they said this figure on the roof is the shooter, but let's talk about what they did say, okay? This is new. So Utah's Commissioner of Public Safety and the FBI special agent in charge of the investigation provided brand new updates Thursday morning about the gunman. And that is what we want to talk about right now. So what have they learned?
I'm Tracy Terrell, and you can count on us. Count on us to listen and put your needs.
Talk about right now. So what have they learned about him so far? How was he able to get away? Take a look.
Through all that work last night, we were able to make a few breakthroughs. We were able to track the movements of the shooter. Starting at 11:52 a.m., the subject arrived on campus, shortly away from campus. We have tracked his movements onto the campus, through the stairwells, up to the roof, across the roof to a shooting location. After the shooting, we were able to track his movements as he moved to the other side of the building, jumped off of the building, and fled off of the campus and into a neighborhood. Our investigators worked through those neighborhoods, contacting anybody they can with doorbell cameras, witnesses, and have thoroughly worked through those communities, trying to identify any leads. We do have good video footage of this individual. We are not going to release that at this time. We are working through some technologies and some ways to identify this individual. If we are unsuccessful, we will reach out to you as the media and we will push that publicly to help us identify them. But we're confident in our abilities right now, and we would like to move forward in a manner that keeps everyone safe and moves this process appropriately.
And the FBI also revealed they found the suspected murder weapon.
This morning I can tell you that we have recovered what we believe is the weapon that was used in yesterday's shooting. This is a high-powered, bolt-action rifle. That rifle was recovered in a wooded area where the shooter had fled. So the FBI laboratory will be analyzing this weapon. Investigators have also collected footwear impression, a palm print, and forearm imprints for analysis. I understand there are a lot of questions about motive. I assure you that all leads, tips are being fully investigated. As of this morning, we have received more than 130 tips. We thank the community for that. The FBI has brought every resource to bear, and we will continue to do so throughout the course of this investigation.
Also, this is just coming out from the Wall Street Journal. They're reporting that the ammunition that was used by Charlie Kirk's killer, it may have been engraved with transgender and anti-fascist ideology. If that is true, that makes a potential motivation for this killing a lot more clear, but we will see. We'll get more updates on that. Now, while officials aren't releasing very many details about the shooter's identity, they implied that he was able to blend in with a crowd on a college campus.
So what I'll release about the suspect is the suspect blended in well with a college institution. We're not releasing any details right now, and we will soon. But right now we're not. But that individual appears to be of college age. We are confident in our abilities to track that individual. If we're unsuccessful in identifying them immediately.
Very, very interesting. And the Public Safety Commissioner also pointed out the importance of today's date, right, for American history, September 11th, and how law enforcement is once again coming together with one goal.
Historically, on 9/11, law enforcement has come together as a group to recognize and honor those that sacrificed to preserve the ideals of this country, the freedoms of this country. And instead, we find ourselves today hunting a murderer who chose to violate our rights, the rights of an individual within this country.
Now, again, I'm going to bring on Tracy. We're going to talk about what all this means. But the FBI
and other agencies, they are actively working to try to track down this shooter. But there is misinformation, there is misidentification, it has run rampant so far, and just minutes after the shooting, there were details that started circulating online about an arrest. There were images on social media showing an older man being hauled away by multiple people, and soon officials would put out a statement saying that this man was not the shooter. He was arrested. He was arrested for obstruction, but he's not the shooter. And then hours later, FBI Director Kash Patel posted on X, formerly known as Twitter, that the subject for the horrific shooting today that took the life of Charlie Kirk is now in custody. But not long after that, the director kind of clarified, saying the subject in custody has been released after an interrogation by law enforcement. Our investigation continues, and we will continue to release information in the interest of transparency. Now, the Public Safety Commissioner pointed out that those people do not deserve to be targeted in person or online.
Yesterday, during the investigative process, we located a couple of persons of interest. We interviewed those individuals, and after releasing them and after clearing them of being suspects, they faced scrutiny, they faced threats. We asked the public to be patient with the investigative process. These individuals were not suspects, they were people of interest. We ask that you do not impose into those people and that investigative process. They don't deserve that harassment for being subject to that.
And that does make you wonder, is that why they are not releasing video of the suspected shooter? We're going to talk about that. Now, there have been makeshift memorials that have sprung up on campus, and some people gathered at the state capitol in Salt Lake City to remember Charlie Kirk. Others paid tribute at Turning Point USA's headquarters out in Arizona. President Donald Trump was one of the first people to confirm that Kirk had indeed died, spoke from the Oval Office Wednesday night.
Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there has never been anyone who was so respected by youth. This is a dark moment for America. Charlie Kirk traveled the nation, joyfully engaging with everyone interested in debate. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever, to share his love of country and to spread the simple words of common sense. On campuses nationwide, he championed his ideas with courage, logic, humor, and grace.
Nah, I ain't gonna do that. I ain't gonna eat on camera. I'm still here. I'm just not gonna eat on camera.
Courage, logic, humor, and grace. It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year.
But you and Charlie were part of the problem, Donald.
Possible. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it, as well as those who go after our judges, law enforcement officials, and everyone else who brings order to our country.
And by the way, the president just announced that he is giving Charlie Kirk the Medal of Freedom posthumously. Tributes have also poured in on social media. Political advisor Stephen Miller posted on X, "Our hearts are shattered. America has lost one of its greatest champions. A loving family has lost the most extraordinary husband and father. All of us must now dedicate ourselves to defeating the evil that stole Charlie from this world." Again, FBI Director Kash Patel, who's close with Kirk, wrote on his personal X account, "Rest in peace, my friend. Conservative titan Charlie Kirk. I am praying for Charlie and his family. His passion for American and fearless leadership inspired millions, and his impact will live on in this movement for generations." Former President Barack Obama posted on X, "We don't yet know what motivated the person who shot and killed Charlie Kirk, but this kind of despicable violence has no place in our democracy. Michelle and I will be praying for Charlie's family tonight, especially his wife Erica and their 2 young children." And as people were fleeing the school, armed law enforcement officers, they were pouring in. They were going from building to building to help escort people to safety. And just before 9 p.m. Eastern Time, school officials gave the all clear, saying there's no ongoing threat to the campus.
Utah Valley University announced that classes were canceled, but the school will be closed until at least Monday. You know we've been on top of this story from the very, very beginning. And we're able to do that, by the way, because of our sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm, a firm with over 1,000 attorneys. You know why they're so big? Because they win a lot. They have recovered over $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. Think about that. In the past few months, a client in Florida received $12 million after the insurance company offered just $350,000. Out in Pennsylvania, a client was awarded $26 million. That is 40 times the insurer's $650,000 offer. You have another client in Pennsylvania who received $29 million after being offered only $500,000. And even if you think your case isn't worth millions of dollars, why not just start a claim and fight for what you deserve? Morgan & Morgan, they make it so simple. You can start a claim from your phone in just 8 clicks. So if you're injured, you can easily start a claim at forthepeople.com/LC sidebar by clicking the link below or scanning the QR code on screen. Okay, so I want to break down what all of this means. This presser just ended, and we're bringing on right now former CIA and FBI agent, friend of the show, Tracy Walder. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. So let's just talk about what we heard here from this presser. They were able to track the movements of the shooter, saying that the shooter arrived on campus at 11:52, tracking the movements through the stairwell to the roof. They find the shooting location, saying the shooter jumped off the building after the shooting, fled into the neighborhood, that they start canvassing the neighborhood, looking for doorbell footage, contacting anyone that has footage. They have confirmed they have video footage of the shooter, but they are not going to release it, and they are working on ways to ID this person. Before we go any further into the revelations from this press conference, let's start there. What do you make of that police work, and what can we glean from that?
Well, thank you so much for having me. Obviously, it's relatively quick police work, in my opinion. I said yesterday that this was going to be a bit of a cumbersome process. In a way, and I don't mean this in a bad way, you have too much digital evidence. You have 3,000 college students, not all, but you have 3,000 college students who all have phones, all have videos. You have CCTV probably all over the school. That takes a long time to go through. So what that tells me is it was probably all hands on deck, obviously most of yesterday, and then into today to review that footage. Also, what's interesting to me is it sounds, just if he arrived at campus, or the shooter arrived at campus at 11:52, as they said in the press conference, that this person was actually not laying in wait all that long. I mean, they were laying in wait a bit, but we're not talking hours or anything like that. And so this is someone that knew, obviously, what was going to take place on the campus that day, knew, in my opinion, probably studied Charlie, how he spoke, how long he answered questions for, and was really prepared in what they were doing.
But also knew where Charlie was going to be positioned and knew exactly where to go. Like the idea of that roof, 200 yards away, set up a position, that was planned. That's what's eerie about it. It doesn't, I mean, again, we're just trying to take it piece by piece here, but it doesn't seem that someone showed up and tried to figure out where's the best place to go. This feels very quick and very coordinated and very planned.
Oh yeah, there's no question. I said that yesterday actually on News Nation, that I think this took quite a bit of planning, in my opinion. Because the reality is, I think they knew where the event would take place simply because it had been promoted beforehand. And they probably knew that that would be that, I guess, what they're calling fishbowl gathering place. So kind of think Las Vegas mass shooting, that also was sort of a fishbowl situation, if you will. And they knew that he would probably be covered a bit with that pop-up tent. That's what he does tend to do in those outside settings, if you will. I believe this is a person that I do think, if they go back, had been on campus before, in my opinion, and had probably scoped out some of the buildings that they felt would be the best and the most opportune to take that shot.
I'll get to this weapon that apparently they recovered in a second, but what's the technology? What is the ways they can work to ID this potential shooter from video footage?
So there's a couple ways. There's obviously facial recognition technology. Now, I don't know how good it is with CCTV or with the Ring doorbell cameras, right? I am not sure how clear of a picture they have of this individual. But one thing you also can do, and they actually did this with Mangione that you brought up before, was menstruate this individual. So how tall are they? Approximately how much do they weigh? You can actually glean all of that information from video footage, even CCTV for the video footage, which isn't good.
Okay, let's talk about this weapon. They announced they recovered a weapon, a bolt-action rifle, found in a wooded area where this alleged shooter had escaped. The FBI announced they are analyzing this weapon. A, are you surprised that seems to be the weapon, the suspected murder weapon here, a bolt-action rifle, based on what we saw and what we heard yesterday? B, the fact of where it was recovered and why it was ultimately discarded. And C, how do they analyze the weapon?
So I'm actually not surprised that it was found. That would be the first thing, quite frankly, someone in a situation like this would do. A bolt-action rifle isn't something that you're obviously going to be able to conceal and run around with, right? Anyone would be sort of picking you off if they saw that. I'm not surprised. I said initially, based on the sound, that this was probably a rifle of some sort. I didn't even need to see it to hear that. It was pretty clear, in my opinion, what kind of weapon this was. I'm not at all surprised it was discarded. I don't know how much evidence they're really going to get off of it. Again, as we talked about before, this person was very prepared. I feel they probably had gloves on in some way, shape, or form, probably had a hat on, any hair was out of the way. So I'll be surprised if it's fruitful in terms of identifying the individual, but obviously it would be used later at a trial or something like that.
So, in other words, you are hesitant to say they might be able to recover fingerprints from the weapon. However, can they find out where it was registered to? Can they find out who purchased it?
Sure. Obviously, all of that is in play, of course. I'm just being honest, I would be very surprised if someone, we talked about this, of this kind of planned nature, right? Scoping out the school, the situation, all of those things, would use a weapon that was registered to them or didn't have the serial number already removed. Now, again, it's great when criminals make mistakes, so maybe that is on there, but I would have thought that would have been one of the first things they would have done, was either remove the serial number or use a weapon that was stolen and not registered.
The bolt-action rifle is that tough to fire? If we're talking about firing it from a roof about 200 yards away, shooting Charlie Kirk in the neck, is that a tough shot? Are you saying there has to be a level of training, or what should we be thinking about in terms of this weapon?
Yeah, I've been asked that question actually a lot. I think we want to think that this is some kind of a trained assassin. You know, maybe we see that in movies, and that's something that we want to see. But the reality is a 200-yard shot, which is about what this is. Again, I don't have the exact data, but a 200-yard shot. I believe he was probably aiming for the head, came in a little bit low, but again, I don't know for sure. This is someone who is familiar, obviously, with weapons. There's no question. I don't think if you've never held a weapon before, you would be able to do that.
He was a
This is someone
hunter.
that probably had a scope attached, had been sitting there for a few minutes, got the target in their sights, and got off that shot. So I think it's someone who is moderately to highly familiar with weapons, but not some kind of a trained assassin. Now, if you were talking about 600 yards or more, sure, but I don't feel that that's far enough for this to be some kind of a sharpshooter.
Is a bolt-action rifle common? Do a lot of people own these?
Yeah, I mean, I would say again, it depends on the area, right? I think if you're living in the middle of New York City, right, or Los Angeles, no. But this is Orem, Utah. There is wilderness. There are hunters. There is a culture surrounding guns. I live in Texas. People have these. So I think it just depends, to be completely honest with you, on where they live.
Life is more legal than you think, and LegalZoom is here to help. Whether it's registering a business,
have these. So I think it just depends, to be completely honest with you, on where they live.
Okay, they also indicated that they've recovered a footwear impression, a palm print, a forearm printer impression. How do they recover that? What do they do with that information? How do they ultimately process that to determine the identity of those people, of that person?
So the footprint is going to be very similar to what we saw in the Brian Kochberger, Idaho case. Obviously, they're going to photograph it. They may even cast it, right, to get an actual impression of that footprint and save it. Then once the problem is let's just say it's a Nike footprint. There are millions of people that own Nikes, and so that's going to be something that might not help them immediately identify the individual, but may help them actually convict this individual if they find them and find that exact shoe print. So that's going to be good for evidence later in terms of obtaining a conviction. Now, a palm print obviously is not the same as a fingerprint, right? It's not as, there may not be a database registered for that, but what they may be able to recover off of that is DNA. And we know how great, obviously, genealogical DNA has been in terms of identifying someone. So if this is not someone in the system, they may be able to do that with a palm print.
And when they say that this is a person who blended in well with the college institution, what does that tell you?
I mean, what that tells me, I believe, and I said this yesterday, that this person had every intention of using the college's cover for themselves. I mean, full stop. So what that tells me is this is someone who at least looks like they belong on a college campus. So we're talking 18 to maybe later 20s. May not be, but looks that way. Someone who really wouldn't draw necessarily attention to themselves, doesn't stick out in this situation. So if someone saw this person walking, to this building, if you will, we also have to think about the fact that there could have been a change of clothes. Afterwards, they said they saw someone in all black clothing, running away from that rooftop. This could have been someone who came to the college in, I guess, plain clothes, not all black necessarily, and then changed out afterwards to disguise themselves more. So I think this is someone who definitely looked like they belonged there.
If I remember correctly from the press conference, they said they got, 130 tips? It's a lot. How do they sort through it to determine what's credible?
I don't mean to sound rude, it's a lot, but it's actually not as many as I thought, if you want me to be completely honest with you, Jesse. I actually thought that we would have thousands, simply because of the sheer volume, right, of how many students were there. Then you have a neighborhood, right, with Ring doorbell cameras, all of the things. You also have a public in this area who is probably on high alert and wants to help. And so I actually thought we would be in the thousands, if you want me to be fully transparent. I'm not saying 130 is low. That's good. That's a great place to start. I'm just honestly surprised there's not more.
Are you surprised the shooter hasn't been caught? I mean, this was a very public area. There wasn't a ton of security, right? They talked about maybe the lack of law enforcement, but they were quick on the scene after the shooting. 3,000 people there. Everybody had cameras. Are you surprised that the suspected shooter was not caught yet?
Yeah, that's a touchy subject because yesterday I actually said on the news when they said they had caught someone, and I think it was sort of an older white male that they had on the ground. I actually said I do not believe that this is the shooter. I believe it is too quick to capture him, and I believe the shot came from the roof. And everyone piled on me for that. And so I am actually not surprised that they haven't caught this individual. I think that this was highly planned. This person absolutely had an egress route, and if this shot did come from the roof, it's not going to be someone who was able to be caught immediately on the ground exiting the scene.
And I wanted your explanation about what happened yesterday. There were reports about individuals who were detained. They were let go. FBI Director Kash Patel saying that a subject was in custody but released after interrogation. I think there was a lot of confusion, particularly online, about where the day was going to end. Can you explain that a little bit more?
I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. This isn't like political in any way. I would say this about any FBI director. I do not believe that they should be putting on social media until they know for certain that this is absolutely the individual, because it does create confusion around the public. And then what happens is people let their guards down, and you may miss other tips, legitimate tips of individuals who really did perpetrate this. So I wasn't a huge fan of that, but I understand the need to want to arrest someone who did this.
When you think about how the shooting happened, talking about shootings, Charlie Kirk was talking about shootings, the last word that he said before he was shot was violence. You see him get shot. Do you think this is a situation where it was one person acting alone? Or do you think it was coordinated and there was some help? I mean, we don't know at this point. I've seen a lot of people talking online about what may or may not have happened. From your perspective, we talked about how it might have been planned. Would you suspect that there could be multiple people involved.
So I think so, but not in the sense that you may think, Jesse. So what I actually think is there are these, they're from Telegram sub-channels, those kinds of things on social media, where individuals talk about this kind of thing and talk about this kind of violence. So I 100% think that there were individuals in this chat room assisting this person, goading this person on, wanting them to do it, because that absolutely exists in this internet subculture. So that's where I think these accomplices came from, and that's what ultimately needs to be shut down.
Real quick, all the videos, all the participants, does the FBI, does local law enforcement, do they try to interview all these people? Do they try to get all this footage? What happens?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because like we said before, this is what 3,000-ish students, and it's real difficult to confiscate all of their cell phones, especially ones that ran away, right? So my guess is what they're going to do is anyone they came into contact with, they probably took their phones or asked for their phones. And also any video that they're seeing being leaked online, shared on social media, they're going to find that, and they're going to find the person who did that, not in a bad way, but they want that video. And so I think those are the things that they're probably doing right now and yesterday.
Tracy, before I let you go, before you have to jump back to News Nation and go, and you're such a brilliant voice on this. Do you have confidence that the shooter is going to be caught within the next few days?
Oh gosh. I would like to hope so. My only concern is that this person has quite a bit of hours of a head start. There is an airport only 45 minutes away. And if we don't have a name on that individual, they actually could be out of the U.S. By this point, and that becomes complicated. So I'd say my confidence is probably 65%.
Tracy, listen, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, literally, this press conference happened 5 minutes. It ended 5 minutes before you came on. Always appreciate your insight. You can check Tracy out online on News Nation. She's a contributor there. Really, thank you so much for taking the time. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Jesse. I really appreciate it.
That is all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll see you next time.
In the Champions League, every picture tells a story, and every great story.
As the race to find the person who gunned down Charlie Kirk intensifies, we are now getting into what happens next. Prosecution, death penalty, legal liability. What are the biggest impacts of this killing? We are going to bring on a major guest to discuss this. One of the best legal minds on TV, CNN senior legal analyst, Ellie Honig. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, so let's continue the analysis of the shooting of Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University, as today, not only did the FBI release a brand new photo of a person of interest in connection with this killing and encouraging those who have information to call 1-800-CALL-FBI. By the way, in a separate post on X, the FBI announced the FBI is offering a reward of up to $100,000 for information leading to the identification and arrest of the individuals responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk on September 10, 2025 at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. Contact 1-800-CALL-FBI. And not only that, but the FBI provided more information today in a press conference about the shooter's movements, about palm prints, about the recovered weapon, tips. I encourage everybody to go check out our episode that we just put out today. I interview former CIA and FBI agent Tracy Walder all about that. And has bits, by the way, from that press conference on there, too. Really, really engaging. But the question now, what we want to talk about right now, is if and when they catch this shooter, what happens? Because actually there are a lot of potential impacts and legal impacts that we got to figure out. And I will tell you, it is shocking. It is shocking. What was supposed to be this outdoor public event attended by about 3,000 people, where this conservative activist and Turning Point USA co-founder was going to just debate those in attendance, regarding politics and culture and societal views. Instead, it turned into absolute violence. The last word he said before he was shot, he was talking about shootings. How ironic is that? But the last thing he said was violence, and then he gets shot. Now, these horrible events that played out yesterday, it's still, I'm not going to lie to you, it's embedded in my head, especially if you watch those videos. It's probably in yours. Those videos that circulated online, they are very hard to shake. And by the way, this comes from somebody who covers the evils of this world on a daily basis. I said this on social media yesterday. But just please think about Charlie Kirk's family and friends who now have a new reality that victims, family members, we talk about it in every case that we cover, they now have a new reality. It is a reality of pain, loss, and confusion. Please just think about them. And I say that because you also have to think about the impact that the legal consequences now will have for the family and friends of Charlie Kirk, right? The trial. At the time of this recording, law enforcement has not caught this shooter. But if and when they do, what happens next? How do you ensure a successful prosecution? What are they doing now? We're talking the death penalty. That's on the table potentially. 2 people were detained yesterday. What about them? Oh, and Utah Valley University? Do they face some questions regarding security? CBS News reporting that according to a university spokeswoman, that single shot through Charlie Kirk's neck that ended up killing him, that was fired from a nearby building 200 yards away. We heard from the FBI who said that the shooter went to that roof. This is a building that houses student support services and resources. How was he able to get up there? I say all that, but now I want to bring on an incredibly special guest to Sidebar, somebody who hasn't been on here before. I'm going to talk to him about the potential legal consequences, the impact here. We are joined by who I will say, in my opinion, is arguably one of the best legal analysts in our business. One of the best I've ever seen. CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig, who previously, by the way, worked for 14 years as a federal and state prosecutor. And most importantly, the reason we were able to get Ellie on here today is because he is the author of an incredible new book. Gave me an early copy. Do I feel special? Yes, I feel special. This is called, let's start it right now, When You Come at the King, Inside DOJ's Pursuit of the President from Nixon to Trump. And Ellie Honig joins me right here. Ellie, so good to see you. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for that very kind introduction. You and I, by the way, share the distinction of both being Dan Abrams fill-ins, right? When on Sirius XM, and I will get calls sometimes where they'll go, Jesse, it's so great when you fill in. I go, well, close enough, but that's the other guy.
You don't just say thank you.
Sometimes I just roll with it. I don't even respond. I'll take it. But thank you for that. By the way, we'll talk more about Charlie Kirk's scenario, but I totally feel the same way as you. I've physically discussed. And you're right that you have to think about the victims. I mean, I've prosecuted murder cases, I've seen scenes, I've seen autopsies, you name it, and it's deeply traumatizing, and I wish people would respect that.
And, you talk about killings all the time. You talk about crimes. To see it, I mean, we don't always get video proof of the killing, right? A lot of times we don't even have the crime scene photos. What we saw yesterday, I am praying that his family never saw it.
I agree.
It was really tough.
You can't stop people from posting it, but the social media sites can take it down.
By the way, we've been trying to capture all of these pressers and announcements as quickly as possible. One of the things that can help us is something called Applaud AI and the new product, the NoPro. It's really great for meetings. The NoPro is an AI meeting assistant. It's about the size of a credit card. It's slim, it's portable, and you can perfectly integrate it with your phone. It snaps on right back there. So one of the things that it's great for is brainstorming sessions. When we're planning new episodes or interviews, it picks up voices from up to 16 feet away. It filters out background noise. It can record non-stop for up to 50 hours. But here's the real game changer. It captures absolutely everything. Audio, pictures, written notes, highlights. And then the app turns it all into these structured summaries with insights and clear to-dos that you can share with your team. And with Ask Applaud, it's like having a second brain. It can draft follow-up emails, pull data reports, help with you brainstorming, all based on the context of your meetings. Plus, NoPro gives you peace of mind. There is a display screen that shows your recording status. It has Apple Find My. It has fast file transfer. And it meets the highest privacy standards, so I feel secure using it for the most sensitive of topics. And if you're like me and you want to make the most of your time, it's time to try Applaud NoPro right now. You can get 10% off Applaud's other features, Note and No Pin, with code Jesse. Just click the link below or scan the QR code on screen. We're going to talk about, what kind of evidence that might be in a trial. But first I have to talk about the book. So I started reading. It's awesome. And I was telling you, I didn't know exactly what it was going to be about. I thought it was only going to be about current investigations. But you discuss everything. So you discuss Watergate. You discuss Bill Clinton and Ken Starr, James Comey and Hillary Clinton, the investigations of Robert Mueller, Jack Smith, John Durham, Robert Hur, David Weiss. You talk about the importance of the special counsel office in general. Why did you write this book? So I love telling the stories, right? I've covered a few of these, right? Since everything from Mueller on, I've covered. And when I started talking to the actual participants, I was a prosecutor, like you said, for 14 years, and it brought me back to that, but so much more, like talking to the actual Watergate prosecutors. What was happening in that office the Sunday morning after the Saturday night massacre? Talking to people on both sides of the Clinton-Ken Starr case. Talking to people who were involved in all those recent cases up to and including the Jack Smith case. It brought me back to being a prosecutor, and I love telling those stories because, A, I think they're just entertaining on their own. B, I think maybe I can contribute a little bit to history with new stuff that's in this book. But C, I think it tells us something about ourselves, who we are as a society, as a community, where our laws, where the sort of outer boundaries of our laws are, and how we go about what do we do when you have that intractable problem where you have to investigate the president. Where does it go from here? We have a very intelligent audience who is very interested in how investigations work, what is happening behind the scenes, prosecutorial decisions, the pressures. And so I think it's going to be really interesting for them. There is a section where you talk about why you named the book the way that you did, because of all the pressure and the danger that faces a special counsel who has to go after a president or a senior official. That's something that gets overlooked, I think. So your audience will probably fully be Wire fans of The Wire, and of course I took it from Omar. Great show. Yeah, you come at the king, you best not miss. Of course, it goes back beyond, that sentiment goes way before Omar. Does it? I thought it just came from it. I did, honestly, but I was like, it goes back to philosophers and stuff. But yes, the stakes are so intense in these cases. They're so high, and you see some of the tactics, and people made interesting, I would say, admissions to me. Like, I'll give you an example. The book opens with a scene where Jill Wine-Banks, who is still around and healthy and sharp as a tack, she was 30 years old and the only woman on the Watergate team, and she told me, I knew it maybe wasn't the smartest thing, but I felt like I had to do it. She was photocopying key pieces of evidence, not physical evidence, but notes and memos, and bringing them home with her. She said other people were doing the same thing, and storing the photocopies in a cardboard box in her home. And the book opens on a scene where her home has just been burglarized. Oh, no. And her first thought is, oh boy. And I'll leave everyone in suspense. Well, that's why we don't, not supposed to keep it there. Right, but her fear, what she says to me, she goes, look, maybe we might have been at the edge of what we call Rule 6E, like the grand jury secrecy rules. Maybe we even violated it. But we were afraid that Nixon's goons were going to come in and just ransack the office. And we felt like we needed an insurance policy. And by the way, there's a great echo of that. The Mueller team, 40-some years later, started setting up a thing where their server, their files were downloaded to a server off-site, a separate server. Same fear, same concern. So I love that sort of strategy, decisions that these people have to make, and they explain what they did. One of the things I really like about you as a legal analyst is you take these complicated subjects and you break them down, not only for someone to easily understand, but like what matters. What should you take away?
Yeah,
and
what should we?
Parts of your book, and I'm just going to list some of them, where it's like, what do we make of it? No, this is what you're supposed to make of it. So there's something interesting you do is you tell people what they really need to remember. So there was a part
Exactly.
the one thing that we most likely about Special Counsel Robert Hur's investigation of Joe Biden was the old man stuff. But the real story was that Biden, then the sitting president, narrowly avoided a recommended criminal indictment. Or you start one chapter where it simply says, Jack Smith never had a chance. Now, what are the misconceptions that you want to clear up about a lot of this? What is like the main point of some of these topics that you're trying to hit for people to really focus on? Yeah, so I think those are two really good examples, right? Jack Smith, I've been critical of some of the things he did. I think he did some things really well. But the real point with Jack Smith is the guy never had a chance because Merrick Garland wasted 2+ years until he actually put him in place. And if you do the math, and by the way, I had written and said this beforehand, there was no possible way he was going to be able to get that case indicted and tried before the 2024 election. And so for all the talk about is he doing things right or well or poorly, there was never any real chance he was going to get it done. You would know that if you had been a prosecutor. And on the Robert Hur, Joe Biden thing, everyone was focused, right? Robert Hur wrote in his final report recommending no indictment. He wrote he was an elderly man with, with a compromised memory. And he ended up being right about that. That's one point. But that's the only thing everyone was focused on. I'm reading his report going, but Joe Biden knew he had classified documents. He denied that. And now we know he knew because he's on tape saying, all the classified stuff is downstairs. And there is a scenario where Robert Hur could have said, obviously he could not have indicted Joe Biden because Biden was the sitting president, but he could have said, I recommend a criminal indictment of Joe Biden. That would have been, you want to talk about something that would have really created an earthquake, that would have created an earthquake. So, I think, look, I'm part of the media and we tend to focus on certain things, but sometimes what's lying underneath is the real story.
Now, for those out there, and I'll tell everybody what I think about the book, but for those out there who say, I'm not really interested in politics, I'm more interested in investigations, I'm more interested in crime. We can't forget, these are actually legitimate crimes that were being investigated, right? Yes. So the people who are interested in that, interested in the true crime aspect, what would you say to them?
Right, I mean, this book will take you into the prosecutor's offices. Yeah. This book takes you into if you want to know how the Watergate prosecutors were thinking about how do we go about pursuing the Nixon tapes, how do we go about interrogating people around Nixon with the additional overlay of politics, you can get that from this book. If you want to get inside the Ken Starr team and the Bill Clinton and the showdown between the two of them, what was it like? I take you inside the room where Bill Clinton is being interrogated on camera for the grand jury, right? It's this famous moment.
Oh, yeah.
And Clinton's famous line was, it depends on what the meaning of is. I talked to the prosecutor who asked Bill Clinton that question, and I said, what did you think of that? Oh, he had a great response. He basically said, it was...
Well, you don't have to tell us.
Let me tell you, because this is fun. I won't give away everything in the book, but it was a 4-hour deposition. They had agreed after much negotiation, and the prosecutor, a guy named Saul Weisenberg, said, I got to tell you, up until that point, he was kicking our ass. He goes, we were 3 hours in.
Yeah.
We hadn't laid a glove on him. He goes, but the way he said that was so smarmy, I'm paraphrasing, that if this was a jury trial, I would have turned to, he was a former prosecutor, I would have turned to the jury like, you believe this guy?
Yeah.
And he goes, that was the only thing anyone was going to remember. But I also talked to Clinton's legal team and what their strategy was and certain tactical surprises that they sprung on Ken Starr. So there's listen, I grew up in this world of being a prosecutor, making cases and the tactics and the investigation, so that's heavy in here.
Where can people buy the book, and can they buy it right now?
Anywhere. It is available technically on September 16th, but if you order it today, it'll arrive on September 16th. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, go to your local independent, whatever it may be.
I would like a real copy of this, because the manuscript you gave me fell apart. Okay?
This is real,
though. You gave me, the glue fell apart.
Yeah, that was the early stuff. This is real.
Okay.
This holds together. It's not it's strong. I'll sign it.
Okay, so I hope everybody can go check it out. When You Come at the King by Ellie Honig. Okay, now we have to talk about Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
So you talked to me about the most graphic, disturbing things you've seen in quite some time.
As a military spouse, it was really important to me to find a program that understood my specific needs.
Now we have to talk about Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
So you talked to me about it was one of the most graphic, disturbing things you've seen in quite some time. One of the first questions I had was, are prosecutors getting involved at this point?
Oh, yes.
How does that work? So I imagine it might be the Utah County Attorney's Office, maybe the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office. What are they doing right now?
So, first of all, yes, prosecutors are involved in this, and I'm sure both the state-level prosecutors in Utah and the feds are.
The reason I say is because there's been no arrest at the time.
Right. But so you say, well, why would a prosecutor be involved? A couple things. You have to work with FBI agents on strategy. I mean, look, my way, I work with FBI agents every day, and my approach was always, you are the point person on the investigation, I'm the point person in the court, but we need to consult both ways. And so an FBI agent may say to you, okay, let's say hypothetically they find a car. What do we do? Do we need a warrant? Can we just get in there? Is there some exception to the warrant? Either way, you're going to need to be consulted and brought in. You need subpoenas. We have to subpoena the phone company, the cell site, the whatever. You have to, that comes from the prosecutor. And you want to be involved because you want to make sure they're not making any mistakes when it comes to Miranda, for example, reading the person their rights, right? Well, we have it. Well, he's talking, but he said something about a lawyer, but now he's in the back of the car. Can we keep talking to, there's all these things that you would definitely need to be consulting with a prosecutor on.
Are the attorneys on scene? Like, are they at the crime scene? If there's someone's brought in, are they coming in now to do maybe potentially part of the interrogation?
You could be, yeah. I mean, look, if they have someone and they're holding them off-site, you could definitely be brought there and drive there. But, this is an interesting sort of federal-state split. The feds, generally speaking, when I was at the U.S. Attorney's Office, it was like, you don't go to the crime scene. That's amateurish. All you can do is become a witness yourself. What if you see something, right? You don't want to make yourself a witness, then you're off the case. State prosecutors tend more to go to the scene. There's a good debate about whether that's smart or not. But look, if they said we have someone in custody, we think this is the guy we're interrogating him, come on out. Like, I would be there in a second.
Right. So let's say there's an arrest. Yeah. Okay. What happens next from the state level? I mean, what do you expect in terms of charges, processing, the criminal process?
So I expect he will be charged both in the state of Utah and federally. Now,
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, ordinarily, federal policy, written policy says, it's called something called the Pettit policy, named after an old case or something, says if the state authorities have already charged something, we generally, not always, but generally don't pile on with our own charges. Here, I think the interest is so high, the public interest, and given the things we've heard from DOJ and from the president, I fully expect to see both. Obviously, there will be murder charges. In the state of Utah, it's actually interesting. So it will be first degree, obviously premeditated. There's no self-defense. There's no heat of the moment type thing. But in order to get it up to the death penalty eligible level, you need an aggravating factor. And I was looking at those aggravating factors just yesterday. The one that I think probably applies most, a lot of it doesn't apply if you murder a law enforcement official, if you have multiple victims. But if in the course of killing somebody, you put other people in grave risk. And I think they'll argue, anytime you fire a rifle into a car, you can hit more than one person. Bullet fragments can explode. So I think they're going to use that to get it that bump up to aggravated and make it death eligible.
Mangione doing the same thing. Those prosecutors said the same thing, even though it was directly shot at, Brian Thompson. There was that nearby witness.
Right.
They said anytime you fire a weapon, there could be ricochet.
Right.
So I agree. I think that's probably what they'll do for aggravating. And the reason we talk about it is because Utah's Republican governor, Spencer Cox, said at a press conference, we still have the death penalty.
Yeah.
And by the way, if they do that, how does that complicate the case if it becomes a death penalty eligible case?
So you have to go through a second layer. Let me talk state and then I'll talk federal.
Sure.
You always have to have a separate trial proceeding. So it's the only place where the jury actually sets the sentence in our system. So first, the jury will decide guilt or non-guilt. Let's assume they find him guilty. Then typically you would keep the same jury and you go, now we go into the penalty phase. And then it gets into aggravating circumstances, mitigating circumstances. Did he have a mental health condition? How premeditated, how gruesome was the act? And then the jury will decide yes or no on death or life in prison. So that's in the
But it also makes it longer.
Certainly makes it longer. You know what one thing it does, though, certainly in the federal system, it gives you what we call a death-qualified jury, and this is an advantage for the prosecution. Defense lawyers hate this because think about it. And again, the same thing in the federal system. You would have to try him, get a guilty verdict, and then go into penalty phase. But when you're picking your jury, you have to ask them, are you capable of recommending the death sentence on a fellow human? And if the person says, no, I just don't think there's any circumstances I can do that, they're out. So think about what that does to your jury pool. If you're a prosecutor, great. I only have people who say they're willing and able to impose a death penalty. Defense lawyers hate it because they go, you're throwing out my best jurors. My best jurors are people who say I could never kill another human. So look, I don't know if there's a way to avoid that. I guess you could bring in separate juries, but federally they don't do it that way.
What would be a federal charge? Mangione, they charged him murder through stalking.
Right.
Is that maybe something similar?
So the thing is, and I think this could be a problem in the Mangione charge. Stalking doesn't just mean you're stalking, right? Because
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Right, it means putting him in reasonable fear.
That's exactly
right. I don't know how Brian Thompson, unless there's some evidence I'm not aware of, that Brian Thompson, the person who Luigi Mangione shot, was knew he was being stalked.
So, in a little side tangent, I just was at CrimeCon and we talked about this.
Yeah.
There is an argument that between the first shot and the second shot of Brian Thompson, he knew he was about to be killed.
Wow.
That has been a legal argument. So this is different. This was one shot to his neck.
Right.
But he had security. He talked about death threats.
Right. Let me give you a couple other possible federal hooks we could see.
Yeah.
It depends if the gun was possessed legally or not. If the gun was a sawed-off, if the gun had a defaced serial number, which happens quite a bit, then it becomes illegal. If he was a felon, this person, prior felon, there are various ways that this person becomes an illegal possessor, federally illegal possessor of a firearm, in which case then it will be using that illegally possessed firearm to murder somebody. So let's wait and see. The details about the firearm are going to matter a lot. That's number one. Number two, if he did it, I'm not seeing another federal crime, but it could be if he did it to advance some other federal crime, or if there was a crossing of state lines involved. It's going to be important where the guy was from, what his path into Utah was. That will determine whether we see federal charges.
What do you make of what this prosecution could potentially look like? And it's a very difficult question that I'm asking you because we don't even know who the suspect is, what motivations are. There was reporting about the bullets may have had engravings regarding anti-fascist comments or transgender comments. The Wall Street Journal reported that. But you have so many witnesses. Well, maybe witnesses to at least the crime, not necessarily the shooter.
Yeah.
So much different camera footage. As a prosecutor,
how would you even begin to process a case like this and try to find the relevant evidence to prosecute? It strikes me as most likely to be an identity type defense, right? I mean, once you conclude it's him, I can't imagine what the defense would be. And yeah, you have to look. You need your surveillance video, but surveillance videos, we've seen it already. It could be any number of people, but it's going to be those forensics. It's going to be the ballistic matches, between the rifle and if there's shell casings, if they're able to recover any fragments. If there's one slug it's probably not going to be testable in any way. It probably shattered, into too many pieces. But ballistics, if you can tie that gun to the person, either through prints, through DNA, or even he might have purchased it in his own name. We don't know. Or somebody who we can tie to him might have purchased it. So look at the firearm itself. Look at forensics around the scene. If a piece of hair fell out, if he's wearing a hat, a glove, something like that, you're going to want to send those to the labs. And then, the visual IDs. Right, if somebody can say, the best thing is if it's somebody who knows the person. It's less ideal if you go, I don't know this guy, but I saw him and he's that guy. It's better if you go, oh, I know that guy. He's John Smith. He lived on the dorm down the hall from me. Then your ID issues are much cleaner. By the way, just going back for a second, is there any charge that you've seen if it's a political assassination? So there are terrorism charges in a lot of state systems. If your motivation was to try to influence or terrify the public and public policy, right? Which could. But the thing to keep in mind, federally, this is a bizarre wrinkle, but federal law has a definition of domestic terrorism, which this seems to satisfy to me. It's that basically. You commit an act because you're trying to influence or intimidate public policy and all that. The problem is there's no crime that goes with it. It's just a definition floating nowhere. There's no federal crime. It sounds crazy. There's no federal crime of domestic terrorism. You can Google it. You'll find a statute that says domestic terrorism is ABC, but there's not a crime that goes with it. So you're going to have to use one of those gun crimes or interstate crimes if you want a federal hook. By the way, this collection of evidence, you mentioned it before, right? So the firearm, the palm prints, the forearm prints, the shoe impressions, the surveillance footage. What are the legal issues that prosecutors face to make sure that evidence is collected properly, that it is not contaminated
Okay, I think they got it. Hold on. Here we go, y'all.
My final expense check came in the mail today for $25,000. I can't believe it's real. My son had mentioned to me what they're calling a final expense package, and what it is a commitment of $25,000 for your final expenses.
Would see an arraignment with Tyler Robinson where he would have an opportunity to plead
And this is
guilty or
CBS
not guilty
News.
to these charges, Major.
And Katrina, Utah, as some of our viewers might know, is the beehive state. So a bee coming around you, distracting, unfortunate, but you handled it very, very well. This is a real simple question. You may have already covered it. I might have missed it, but might this be delayed if there is no attorney for Tyler Robinson? Or is it okay for this to proceed even if there is no counsel for him presently?
I mean, traditionally they would appoint a public defender if he hasn't secured his own attorney, Major.
Okay, very good. And what else did the prosecutors outline in the briefing with reporters earlier today?
We learned a lot, Major, during this press briefing, especially about what was going on behind the scenes as they were looking for Tyler Robinson. We heard about interactions that he had with his parents, who, when they saw the photos, the video, and the picture of the rifle that were put out by the FBI, they thought they recognized their son and what apparently is a very distinctive weapon that he used. It belonged to his grandfather. We also heard about text exchanges between him and his roommate, who is also his romantic partner. He told them to look under his laptop keyboard where there was a note that said that he had taken an opportunity to kill Charlie Kirk. There was also a further exchange where he was talking about how he wanted to go back and get the rifle. He thought that was the only thing at the scene that would end up incriminating him. Ultimately, he did not end up being able to do that. But we did learn a little bit about his motivation. He said to both his parents and to that roommate that he felt that Charlie Kirk was spreading too much hate. And with those charges that you mentioned, Major, the aggravating factors for the first two charges are in part that they felt Charlie Kirk was targeted for his political expression.
So indeed, there was more presented about, if not a clear-cut motive, something that was in the motivational direction. Was that your interpretation of what you heard today, Katrina?
Yeah, Yes, absolutely. I mean, everything still has to be determined in court, but we just learned a little bit more about his mindset as he was going into this, what he was thinking, what he was saying in exchanges with close family and friends. We also learned. Oh, sorry.
Katrina, let me jump in because the proceeding has started. Let us go to that now, if we can.
Ryan McBride, Lauren Hunt, David Sturgill, and Chris Ballard. We are the trial team on this case. I do have a few points I'd like to bring up with your honor. We have filed a pretrial protective order on behalf of Erica Kirk. We would ask the court to review that. It should be in your queue, your honor, and sign that.
Thank you. I have reviewed the pretrial protective order and will be issuing this pretrial protective order in favor of Erica Kirk. Is there any other business that we need to address today, counsel?
Just for the court's information, we did file just recently, within the last few minutes, a notice of intent to seek the death penalty. That was filed by Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray. So that should be in the court's file. Lastly, I would just indicate to the court and to, at this point, Mr. Robinson, that we are prepared to collect all of the discovery in this matter and get that turned over to the defense as soon as possible. Rule 16 requires us to provide what we have relied on in charging the information and bringing these charges within 5 days once it's requested. So that'll be prepared to disseminate to the defense as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Grander. Mr. Robinson, what I also want to do is you have the right to have the charges read that you stand charged of, and I wish to read those to you at this time. Thank you. Mr. Robinson, for count 1, aggravated murder, a capital felony in violation of Utah Code Annotated 76-5-202, in that on September 10th, 2025 in Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Charlie Kirk under the following circumstances. The defendant knowingly created a great risk of death to another individual.
You have the right to know what's happening in your community. Now it's easier than ever.
Conviction of this offense may carry the death penalty, or pursuant to Utah Code 76-3-207.7, a mandatory term of imprisonment for life without parole, or an indeterminate term of not less than 25 years, and that may be for life. Victim targeting enhancement in violation of Utah Code Annotated 76-3-203.14 sub 2. Tyler James Robinson intentionally selected Charlie Kirk because of Tyler James Robinson's belief or perception regarding Charlie Kirk's political expression. Notice, if the trier of fact finds beyond a reasonable doubt that the victim targeting enhancement applies, the sentencing judge or the Board of Pardons and Parole shall consider the defendant's selection of the victim as an aggravating factor. Violent offense committed in the presence of a child aggravating factor, the sentencing judge or the Board of Pardons and Parole shall consider as an aggravating factor in their deliberations that the defendant committed a violent criminal offense in the presence of a child. Count 2, felony discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury, a first-degree felony, in violation of Utah Code Annotated 76-11-210 sub 2 and 3C, in that on September 10th, 2025 in Utah County, the defendant Tyler James Robinson discharged a firearm in the direction of Charlie Kirk, knowing or having reason to believe that Charlie Kirk may be endangered by the discharge of the firearm, and that the act caused serious bodily injury to Charlie Kirk. Victim targeting enhancement in violation of Utah Code Annotated 76-3-203.14 sub 2. Tyler James Robinson intentionally selected Charlie Kirk because Tyler James Robinson's belief or perception regarding Charlie Kirk's political expression. Notice, if the trier of fact finds beyond a reasonable doubt that the victim targeting enhancement applies, the sentencing judge or the Board of Pardons and Parole shall consider the defendant's selection of the victim as an aggravating factor. Violent offense committed in the presence of a child, aggravating factor. The sentencing judge or the Board of Pardons and Parole shall consider an aggravating factor in their deliberations that the defendant committed a violent offense in the presence of a child. Count 3, obstruction of justice, a second-degree felony in violation of Utah Code Annotated 76-8-306 sub 2, in that on September 10th, 2025 in Utah County, the defendant Tyler James Robinson, with intent to hinder, delay, or prevent the investigation, apprehension, prosecution, conviction, or pursuant to any person regarding conduct that constitutes a criminal offense, conceal or remove the firearm used to shoot Charlie Kirk, and the conduct that constitutes an offense would be a capital felony or a first-degree felony. Count 4, obstruction of justice, a second-degree felony in violation of Utah Code 76-8-306, sub 2. In that on or about September 11th, 2025 in Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, with an intent to hinder, delay, or prevent the investigation, apprehension, prosecution, conviction, or punishment of any person regarding conduct that constitutes a criminal offense, destroyed, concealed, or removed the clothing he wore during the shooting, and the conduct that constitutes an offense would be a capital felony or a first-degree felony. Count 5, tampering with a witness, a third-degree felony in violation of Utah Code Annotated 76-8-508, in that on or about September 10th, 2025 in Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, believed that an official proceeding or investigation was pending or about to be instituted or intended to prevent an official proceeding or investigation, and attempted to induce or otherwise cause his roommate to withhold testimony, information, a document, or an item to wit, directing his roommate to delete incriminating text messages. Count 6, tampering with a witness, a third-degree felony, in violation of Utah Code Annotated 76-8-508, in that on or about September 11th, 2025 in Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, believed that an official proceeding or investigation was pending or about to be instituted or intended to prevent an official proceeding or investigation, and attempted to induce or otherwise cause his roommate to withhold testimony or information, to wit, directing his roommate to stay silent if the police questioned the roommate. Count 7, violent offense committed in the presence of a child, a Class A misdemeanor in violation of Utah Code Annotated 76-3-203.10 sub 2 and 76-3-203.14 sub 3a little double I, in that on or about September 10th, 2025 in Utah County, the defendant, Tyler James Robinson, committed criminal homicide in the physical presence of a child younger than 14 years of age, with knowledge that a child was present and that may have been seen or heard the commission of the criminal homicide. Victim targeting enhancement in violation of Utah Code Annotated 76-3-203.14 sub 2, Tyler James Robinson intentionally selected Charlie Kirk because of Tyler James Robinson's belief or perception regarding Charlie Kirk's political expression. That concludes reading the information. Mr. Robinson, this case is set for September 29th at 10 a.m. It will be a waiver hearing, and I will be the judge assigned to this case. And Mr. Robinson, I invite you to join us at that time. Is there anything further, counsel?
No, Your Honor, we'll have counsel appointed by then. Thank you.
Mr. Gurander, anything further?
One item, just for clarification, Your Honor, the hearing on the 29th, is that in person or WebEx?
Thank you. That is a great question. It will be via WebEx.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
All right. I want to thank all parties for being here, and this
that
concludes
was
this
quick.
hearing at this time. Court
Surprisingly
is in
quick.
recess.
That concludes the hearing in the 4th Judicial District, Provo District Court. Tony F. Graff Jr., judge presiding. You heard the charges. They need to be read out. Procedure matters in all criminal cases, and specifically in one of heightened national, potentially global interest, such as this one. A couple of other notes to put together also, which we will try to do with our panel and with Katrina Kaufman, who is outside the courthouse. There was a protective order filed by Erica Kirk, that is the widow of Charlie Kirk. That was approved by the judge. Also, the state made clear vocally that it will seek the death penalty if, in fact, Tyler Robinson is found guilty of the aggravated murder charge you heard outlined by the judge, and that in several of the charges mentioned, there was an aggravating factor, that of political targeting and or motive in those charges. That was outlined by the state. That will, of course, have to be proven before a jury and evidence presented sufficient to cross over the barrier of a reasonable doubt. That is to say, it was clear to the jury that there was something political about this assassination, but the state has so alleged. I want to bring in our CBS News Justice correspondent Scott McFarland and former federal prosecutor Scott Frederickson, who joined me now at the table. Scott Frederickson, I want to start with you. Based on what you heard and what the prosecutors outlined in briefing to the reporters in Utah earlier today, what are your takeaways?
Well, first, I think we see an overwhelmingly strong case. Even though there's no eyewitness testimony, the fact is eyewitness testimony is often, sometimes, the most vulnerable kinds of evidence. Instead, they have here what we seem to have is three separate admissions. Once with his roommate or romantic interest, a second time with his chat group on Discord, and third, it looks like also impliedly so with his parents. So there's no stronger evidence in front of a jury than a defendant admitting that to other third parties. On top of that, we have very strong physical evidence compiled by the government so far. You've got DNA evidence. You've got the rifle that seems to be associated with him through a gift from his parents, his grandfather's rifle. So a really overwhelming case. And then a second point I'd say, I'm impressed with the Utah County Prosecutor's Office so far. They really are on top of this. They indicated they're ready to go right now. They're going to turn over discovery. They're ready to do that in 5 days. That's fast. The Utah County Attorney was very professional in the way he outlined the charges and evidence in a way not to prejudice the trial. That was impressive as well. So that's
and reporters were pressing the prosecutor, Jeffrey Gray, to go in lots of areas, and he said, I'm just not going to go there. I'm going to present the evidence that we have, and the charges align with the evidence we have, and everything else, stay tuned. If there is anything more, we'll communicate it to you. Scott, what did the absence today, before this proceeding, but at the briefing that Jeffrey Gray had with reporters, the lack of a presence of a U.S. attorney, does this appear to you right now to be a state-led prosecution with the federal government assisting but not properly charging?
Clearly, this seems to be a state prosecution. No doubt the Department of Justice is searching for any potential basis to bring this case in federal court. But the fact that there was no U.S. attorney here and obviously no federal charges is strong evidence. They just haven't found it.
And again, this CBS
federal
News.
jurisdiction is limited. They have to have a basis. So whether it's air piracy or some kind of assassination of a federal official, a politician, something like that, there has to be an independent basis. Here we have a private citizen who was assassinated in state. There doesn't seem to be any travel across state lines, and there's no conspiracy with others so far. They're an ongoing investigation. So right now, I would say the Department of Justice is stepping back, and that's a smart thing to do. The worst thing they could do is jump in and file charges and then potentially put the state charges at risk here, because this is a death penalty case. And that means that the courts will be looking closely at everything that's done in the case to make sure this defendant gets a fair trial, and if convicted, gets a fair trial on whether he will be put to death.
Scott McFarland, your impressions?
Well, start off with really what is a difficult to read charging document. Some of those text messages are vivid in their allegations and in their color. You can see these messages exchanged between a person and his roommate, allegedly with the roommate questioning When did you start planning this? Did you do this alone? Those types of things are remarkably visceral to read, but I also was struck by the allegations in the charging document in which you have a mother and a father asking each other, did you see this? Does this look like our son? Think about that from a broader vantage point. What an anguishing conversation that was.
What an anguishing human drama that had to have been within that family structure.
It's hard to escape that, no matter the notoriety of the case or the horror of the allegations. That is quite a picture that is painted in this charging document. Is this what they would call a speaking indictment, where they kind of lay out more of the case than they needed to?
This is information, so it's not an indictment.
Yeah.
It's not technically a speaking indictment, although it has all the allegations in there. We will see more of that if the case it'll go next to essentially the preliminary hearing, where the judge will determine whether there's probable cause. The Utah State Attorney will put on maybe one witness, minimal witnesses, to establish that, and then the case goes forward. But yeah, this is interesting because we're all used to a grand jury here, and not here. This is the prosecutor laying that out in the 7 charges and speaking only about what the evidence shows.
And Scott, based on your understanding, and if you don't have it, that's fine. I'm just curious about it. The aggravating factor dimension of this, meaning you have underlying charges, but they can be prosecuted with aggravation if there is something that you could present to the jury that denotes some sort of political animosity.
On those first 2 charges, the aggravated murder and the felonious use of a gun, those were the aggravating factors were specified by the state local prosecutor as relevant. One of the things Justice Department sources were saying over the weekend is, let's see what's up with the firearm. Is there a federal nexus to a crime there? But in this information, they say this was grandpa's gun. So that seems highly unlikely as well. But the FBI director opened up a can of worms today as well, telling the Senate panel that they are going to investigate everybody and anybody who was on that Discord chat that runs somewhat counter to what local prosecutors were initially saying, that there's one person believed responsible for this and only one person. As the county attorney was asked about this today, he also said they haven't ruled out others being involved, which is different than saying others are under investigation.
Right. And Scott, on that last point, involved, aware, participating, those are gray areas that are very specifically defined in law. They'll have to get a lot of evidence if they're going to bring charges of foreknowledge or conspiracy.
Right. And, right now it's not there. And it'd be a mistake to try and overcharge or bring others into this case and jeopardize.
Or suggest you have something that the evidence doesn't yet prove.
Exactly.
Or even suggest.
Why put at risk what is a very strong case against this man? My concern is really right now a little bit more about the death penalty part. They laid out evidence that they could try this case, the prosecution, in a week or 2 and get a guilty verdict in all likelihood. It's strong evidence. But then they go into a different phase, which is the going into the death penalty phase. And that's when they can bring in whether the jury pool has been tainted by, say, the FBI director going on a talk show last night and talking about the evidence. Not supposed to do that. DOJ regulations say you don't do that. So that could be a little more complicated. The federal government could be handing the defense a little more arguments and stuff they can work on appeal to say they're not getting a fair trial, the jury pool is tainted.
My thanks to you, Scott Frederickson, Scott McFarland, and to Katrina Kaufman, who's outside the courthouse, and I apologize for having to jump in on her when the proceeding was started, but sure enough it did. One other thing, September 29th will be the next hearing in this matter. That will also be conducted virtually, as the Judge Tony F. Graff Jr. told all who were watching. Still to come, FBI Director Kash Patel gets grilled on Capitol Hill over his handling of Charlie Kirk.
With that being said, I've been here 3 hours and I'm done. See y'all later. Peace.